Chapter 611. On the ancient peak, more and more people gathered. All of them were staring at the silhouette of the young man walking towards the grass hut. The first time Qin Wenyan came to the battle sword sect, he had comprehended 14 sword strikes, breaking the record of the grass hut. After so many days, he once again arrived at the grass hut. The 15 sword strikes of the grass hut, nobody under celestial phenomenon can comprehend it. Can Qin Wenyan comprehend it? Many mused in their hearts. Qin Wenyan had already comprehended 14 sword strikes. Right now, he had to start from the 15th sword strike. However, the 15th sword strike had the reputation of being impossible for anyone under celestial phenomenon to comprehend it. They wondered if Qin Wenyan would be able to bring any surprises to them. Lin Shuai arrived. He stared at the junior apprentice brother he had personally welcomed into the battle sword sect. This was the most outstanding junior apprentice brother he had met ever since he entered the sect. He wondered what surprises Qin Wenyan would bring to him this time around. Yi Lingshuang arrived. Her attitude had already undergone a huge change compared to the first time they met. Back then, she couldn't stand the sight of Qin Wenyan, feeling that he was extremely lecherous. Even little rascal dared to assault her sensitive spots. But this time around, she only had anticipation in her heart. Senior Sister Lu. At this moment, a beautiful maiden appeared on the mountain peak opposite the grass hut. It was none other than Lu Bingyu. Her clear eyes stared at the silhouette before her. Bingyu. It was unknown when Ji Feishue appeared beside Lu Bingyu. Lu Bingyu glanced at him. She discovered that after returning from the immortal martial realm, her attitude towards Ji Feishue was completely different. There was no longer any trace of competition or admiration, there was only calmness. Such a transformation happened soundlessly. Feishue, you have to work hard. Junior Sister Lu's cultivation base has already broken through to the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper after her closed-door seclusion. Lin Shuai glanced at the two beside him and smiled. His words caused Ji Feishue's eyes to flicker as he cast a deep glance at Lu Bingyu. When Lu Bingyu was in Wu Mu's world monument, she was one of the few who could comprehend the energy of the stone rampart. Her outstanding talent was slowly being displayed. Li Hanyu also arrived. The expression she had when she stared at Qin Wenyan was incomparably complicated. Back then, she had once looked down on him, but now, he couldn't even be bothered to look her in the eye. Or maybe, it could be said that Qin Wenyan had never looked her in the eye before. If not, why would he directly slap her in the face? Back then in the immortal martial realm, she had cursed Qin Wenyan with hatred in her heart. Yet, she discovered that Qin Wenyan had walked all the way to the end, becoming the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. Such a feeling, other than herself, no one else could understand it. Other than the disciples of the battle sword sect, how many celestial phenomenon ascendants from the battle sword sect were spying on them? Qin Wenyan stood in the grass hut, causing a huge commotion in the battle sword sect. Lu Bingyu had never experienced such treatment before, neither had Ji Feishue. In the past 100 years, only Qin Wenyan had ever experienced such treatment. At this moment, Qin Wenyan had already started to comprehend the first 14 sword strikes. He had already comprehended the first 14 sword strikes, he only needed to comprehend it once more. Comprehending a sword strike was a kind of comprehension, a kind of understanding. Since he had already comprehended it once, the second time was naturally much easier. He directly walked up to the 15th sword strike. Once again he saw the scene from back then. In front of Qin Wenyan, there was a mountain rampart. This mountain rampart depicted a violent ancient demon that wanted to devour the heavens and destroy the earth. It was incomparably frenzied, as though it wanted to destroy everything. However, all of this was dissipated by a single sword strike. That sword landed in the middle of the evil dragon and demonic phoenix, instantly disintegrating the evil dragon, turning it into dust. Everything was destroyed. I could sense the existence of martial wills in the first 14 sword strikes. Even if it was a fusion of martial wills, I still managed to comprehend it in the end. However, only this sword strike. Is it really like what I thought it was previously, a fusion of martial wills at a deeper level? Qin Wenyan mused. If it was truly a fusion of mandates at a deeper level, it would be extremely difficult for him to comprehend which mandates were fused together. There was a high possibility that he would return in failure, unable to comprehend the 15th sword strike. However, this time around, Qin Wenyin had a strange feeling. This sword strike was extremely pure, so pure that it was merely a single type of energy. It wasn't a fusion of many different types of mandates. Naturally, there was also a possibility that it was a fusion of a completely new type of energy. Given his current strength, he wouldn't be able to sense it. Qin Wendian closed his eyes. It was as though the image on the rampart was directly imprinted into his mind, as he repeated that sword strike over and over again. If one doesn't step into celestial phenomenon, they won't be able to comprehend the 15th sword strike. Qin Wendian mused. Celestial phenomenon. What was a celestial phenomenon? In the celestial phenomenon realm, one's comprehension of mandates had to reach another level, surpassing the perfection boundary of the second level. This level was known as the true intent of a mandate. Truth, it referred to true comprehension. For example, the first level he comprehended was force, and the second level was void shockwave. But was there only these two transformations for his mandate of force? Clearly, there was still a third and fourth transformation. For example, gravity, the omnipresent force. Only by truly comprehending the mandate of force would one be able to step past this level and comprehend the true intent of the mandate of force. This step was already exceedingly difficult. It was unknown how many cultivators had tried to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm. Many of them spent their entire lives trying to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm. But this was only one of the conditions to step into the celestial phenomenon realm. If one truly wanted to step into celestial phenomenon, they still had to convert their astral novas back into their astral souls, using their astral souls to form a constellation. For this step, one had to take the previous step as the foundation. Only by comprehending the true intent of a mandate would one be able to comprehend their own constellation. Constellations were all-encompassing, containing a myriad of transformations. At the same cultivation level, if one of them had an extraordinary constellation, he or she could easily suppress 10 or even 20 ordinary constellations. In fact, he or she might even be able to insta-kill them. This also meant that there were many who had no way to step into the celestial phenomenon realm in their entire lives. But when you were feeling complacent after stepping past that barrier, you would discover to your sorrow that the disparity between cultivators at the same level could be magnified to the point of despair. The more Qin Wendian understood, the more he understood how terrifying the disparity between cultivation levels was. Back then, if it wasn't for him transforming into a great rock and wielding the demon sword, the celestial phenomenon ascendants of the Pill Emperor Hall would be able to squash him to death as easily as squashing an ant. And precisely because of this, the Pill Emperor Hall missed the best opportunity to squash him to death, thinking that they could kill him anytime they wanted. That sword strike, could it be that the true intent of a mandate was infused into the sword? When Qin Wenyin thought of the celestial phenomenon realm, a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. If one didn't step into celestial phenomenon, it was impossible for one to comprehend the 15th sword strike. If the 15th sword strike was a true intent, heavenly Dipper sovereigns naturally wouldn't be able to see through the essence of this sword strike. As Qin Wendian thought of this, he started to comprehend in this direction. He didn't think about whether this sword strike was a fusion of mandates or not. Closing his eyes tightly, that sword strike repeated itself thousands of times in his mind. Finally, he felt that his perception of the sword had slowed down. He could see more clearly, and he could see more clearly. Time flowed by unknowingly. Qin Wenyin suddenly understood that for those who could complete the entire trial of comprehending the sword, how high would their comprehension abilities be? How could they not become a hero of their generation? A day later, the silhouettes on the ancient peak were still there. They stared at Qin Wenyin, yet Qin Wenyin still didn't move. Could it be that there was no way to comprehend the 15th sword strike after all? If one didn't step into celestial phenomenon, they wouldn't be able to comprehend the 15th sword strike. Was there really no way to break this iron rule? Many people sighed in their hearts. Seems like a miracle wouldn't happen. Qin Wenyin was still immersed in his thoughts. In his mind, that sword strike grew even clearer. He could sense the power contained within that destructive sword strike. That speed, that lacerating might, that omnipresent power. If he had to find a mandate that was compatible with him, then it should be wind. The mandate of wind couldn't be described as a will, but rather the true intent of the mandate of wind. This was because there were many different types of mandates contained within. The speed of the wind, the lacerating might of the wind, the misty wind, the omnipresence of the wind. Understood. Qin Wenyin opened his eyes. After which, he placed his palms on the mountain rampart in front of him as his perception gushed forth. Instantly, a dazzling beam of sword light tore through the heavens and earth, humming unceasingly. At this moment, above the grass hut, sword chi gushed forth, ravaging the heavens and earth. The 15th sword strike, comprehended. He only used a single day. Awesome. Lin Shuai had a smile on his face. This junior brother of his had truly brought him a pleasant surprise. He was able to comprehend this sword strike when he was only at the heavenly dipper realm. In that case, in the eyes of others, celestial phenomenon was a heavenly mote. Maybe to Qin Wenyin, it was only a matter of time. Since he could comprehend this sword strike, it meant that one day he would be able to comprehend it himself. Wenyin is truly too outstanding. Yi Lingshuang's beautiful eyes flashed with joy. This foster brother of hers might even surpass her father in the future. How good would it be if he was her biological younger brother? If that was the case, her father wouldn't need to worry about who would inherit his legacy. The eyes of Lu Bingyu and Ji Feishue also flickered with astonishment. The disciples of the battle sword sect all exclaimed in shock. However, this was only the beginning. The second diagram was the same as the first diagram. It was so similar that it almost made people think that it was the same painting. But ultimately, Qin Wenyin used 12 hours to comprehend it. The energy contained within this sword strike was the power of space. Although the process was similar, at the instant of destruction, the might it unleashed was far more powerful. Next, for the 17th sword strike, Qin Wenyin used 8 hours. For the 18th sword strike, Qin Wenyin used 6 hours. For the 19th sword strike, Qin Wenyin used 4 hours. For the 20th sword strike, Qin Wenyin used 2 hours. For the 21st sword strike, Qin Wenyin used an hour. After 2 days, he comprehended another 7 sword strikes, from the 15th to the 21st. The people on the ancient mountain peak were all dumbstruck. They stared blankly at Qin Wenyin advancing towards the direction of the grass hut. He had already completed the 22nd sword strike. This was already a goal that the vast majority of the members of the battle sword sect had no way of accomplishing. For those below the celestial phenomenon realm, Qin Wenyin had already arrived at this place. How difficult was the 22nd sword strike? Could the person who broke the record of the grass hut still be able to continue forward? Nobody knew the answer, but the gazes of the entire battle sword sect were all focused on the grass hut. Chapter 612. The 22nd Sword Strike. Qin Wenyin stood in front of the mountain rampart. This time around, other than the terrifying gigantic demonic beasts, there was also a vast starry sky. It was as though this was a constellation. Constellation, these demonic beasts are all under the constellation. Qin Wenyin stared at the demonic beasts that were wreaking havoc in the air, yet they were all enveloped by a constellation. There was no need to doubt that only heavenly dipper sovereigns could summon such a constellation. A constellation was the sign of someone stepping into the celestial phenomenon realm. Those gigantic demonic beasts howled in frenzy. At this moment, within the constellation, numerous sharp swords arced through the air, raining down from the heavens. This was a constellation formed from the foundation of swords. These sharp swords arced through the air, resembling streams of light as a destructive energy ravaged the entire space. The gigantic demonic beasts that were enveloped by the constellation all screamed in agony as fresh blood flowed from their wounds. All of them were annihilated by this terrifying constellation. This constellation is so powerful. Qin Wenyan's heart trembled. He had heard that there were great disparities in the strength of constellations, but he had no idea what grade the constellation in front of him was at. This destructive energy seems to be the energy of lightning. However, there's no obvious hint of it, only the radiance of light that exudes a destructive energy. Qin Wentian mused. He had heard that the structure of a constellation could be divided into many different types. A constellation formed from a single true intent infused into a martial soul was the simplest type of constellation. The constellation in front of him right now was formed from swords. This indicated that the martial soul should be a sword. However, there were some extremely powerful constellations that were formed from the fusion of 2 or even 3 different types of true intents. Such constellations would be extremely powerful, especially for those with supreme comprehension abilities. They would be able to comprehend a mutated version of the constellation. For example, even if 2 different people used 2 different types of true intents to comprehend their constellations, the constellations they formed in the end would still be different, resulting in the disparity in power. The constellation in front of him didn't seem to be a constellation formed from a single true intent of lightning. Could there be a true intent of sword hidden within? Qin Wentian thought to himself. After all, sword intent was also proficient in destructive prowess, so it was not surprising that it could create such an effect. But even if Qin Wentian had guessed it, unless he could truly comprehend the formation of this constellation, there was no way for him to comprehend it. Not only that, his cultivation base was only at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. Although his 2nd level of mandate was already at the perfection boundary when he exited the immortal martial realm, he had yet to comprehend a true intent of his mandate. Wanting to comprehend a fusion of true intents was simply too difficult. The first 7 sword strikes only contained a single martial intent, so it was still possible to comprehend it. However, the difficulty of the 22nd sword had risen to another level. Most likely, it would be extremely difficult to comprehend. Qin Wentian closed his eyes and comprehended quietly. During this period, he reached out to touch the mountain wall several times, but he failed to comprehend the sword each time. Obviously, his perception was wrong. Very quickly, a day passed. Qin Wentian faintly sensed that this sword strike contained a true intent of wind. If the true intents of wind and lightning were to fuse together, he didn't know what effect it would produce. There was a possibility that it would be able to create such a scene of destruction. Maybe he was right. But even if he was right, without truly comprehending the formation of this constellation, he still wouldn't be able to comprehend this sword strike. I haven't even comprehended a true intent of my mandate, yet I want to comprehend a constellation formed from a fusion of true intents? Seems like I've overestimated myself. Qin Wentian calmly smiled. He wasn't disappointed. Seems like this 22nd sword strike was truly impossible to comprehend before he comprehended a true intent of his mandate. As he thought of this, Qin Wentian smiled and gave up. He turned and descended the steps of the grass hut, causing those on the mountain peak to heave a sigh of relief. The 15th sword strike of the grass hut was already known to only be comprehended by those who were at the celestial phenomenon realm. Qin Wentian had already comprehended the 22nd sword strike. If he continued any further, it would actually be abnormal. Unless there was a soul of a celestial phenomenon ascendant in Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, arriving at the top of the mountain peak. Lin Shuai smiled at him. Why? Not continuing? It's just a waste of time. Let's comprehend it next time. Qin Wentian smiled. It's already very impressive that you could comprehend the 7th sword strike that contained a true intent of your mandate. I believe that it won't take too long for you to comprehend a true intent of your mandate. When your cultivation base reaches that level, you would be able to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm. Lin Shuai spoke to Qin Wentian. Although you can use some treasures to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm, you mustn't depend on external sources. It's best to rely on your own comprehension. Also, try your best to condense a better constellation. Don't be greedy, you have to focus on perfection. Understood. Qin Wentian nodded his head. He knew that when condensing a constellation, some powerful cultivators might condense a few different types of constellations. But normally speaking, they would only use the most powerful constellation for combat. Lin Shuai was worried that Qin Wenyan would go astray and hoped that Qin Wenyan would focus on condensing more powerful constellations instead of relying on quantity. When are you preparing to move out? Lin Shuai asked again, naturally referring to the sacred battle platform. Let's move out now, there's not much time left. Let's head to the sacred royal city first, I'm also very interested in that place. Qin Wenyan spoke. The sacred battle platform was located in the sacred royal city. No matter what, Qin Wenyan had to make a trip there. The vast and powerful sacred royal city was considered as sacred ground in the entire royal sacred region. He headed there a few days earlier because he had some things he needed to do. Okay, I will inform my master and get him to send some people over. Lin Shuai spoke. No need, I'm proficient in disguise techniques. Qin Wenyan transmitted his voice to Lin Shuai. Lin Shuai started before nodding his head, replying to Qin Wenyan, okay, I will get the elders of the Battle Sword sect in the Royal Sacred Sect to wait for you at the sacred battle platform. I will return to inform them first. Qin Wenyan smiled as he nodded. After which, he left the mountain peak and gathered Ouyang Fanla and the others, telling them that he planned to head to the sacred royal city alone. Right? I'm preparing to return to Grand Xia first. Ouyang Guangxing spoke. He planned to look for Jiang Ting. I wish to roam around the southern region of the royal sacred region. After that, I will meet up with you guys in Grand Xia. Fan Lu smiled. I'm returning to Grand Xia, Yun Mingyi replied in a low voice. Right? Seems like we have to temporarily part ways. After returning to Grand Xia, remember to return to the unmatched realm. We will meet up there. Qin Jing smiled. Other than Mu Feng, these people were all disciples of the unmatched realm. Qin Wenyan nodded his head lightly. Now that he had made enemies in the royal sacred region, he naturally couldn't act as brazenly as before. Also, they all had their own matters to attend to, it was inevitable that they would part ways. Right, Grand Xia, let's meet again. Qin Wenyan and his companions hugged each other. When Yun Mingyi returned, he noticed her beautiful eyes staring at him. He smiled and walked up, giving her a hug as well, causing Yun Mingyi's eyes to flicker. Little rascal, let's go. Qin Wenyan called out. Instantly, a white silhouette dashed over. A man and a demonic beast walked out of the Battle Sword sect. The sacred royal city, the sacred city of the royal sacred region. This ancient city had an ancient history, exuding an aura of majesty. It was unknown how many people would enter and exit this ancient city every day. The atmosphere here was extremely strong, even a stone thrown on the streets could hit a celestial phenomenon ascendant. Hence, it was best not to antagonize the young masters and young mistresses here, or you wouldn't be able to do so. The sacred royal city contained the absolute hegemon of the royal sacred region, the royal sacred sect. It also had the most famous battle arena, the sacred battle platform, as well as the largest trading market. The 9 great sects of the royal sacred region, the 7 great clans, the 2 empires, as well as the many ancient empires, all had residences in the sacred royal city. They would send their juniors here to broaden their horizons, enroll in the famous academies in the sacred royal city, or send them to the royal sacred sect. At this moment, Qin Wenyan stepped into this ancient city that was home to many of the most ancient cities in the royal sacred region. He was casually clad in a simple white robe. The contours of his face were clear, and one could faintly see traces of handsomeness. He appeared to be around 30 years of age, and evidently, this was his appearance after changing his appearance. I'm so tired. A slightly immature voice drifted out from beneath Qin Wenyan. The one who spoke was a demonic beast. This demonic beast was exceptionally adorable. It was a little white tiger. The runes on its body didn't exude the aura of a king, and the way it shook its head made it seem like it was drunk. This demonic beast was naturally none other than Little Rascal. Qin Wenyan wasn't the only one on Little Rascal's back. There was also a maiden with a peerless figure, dressed in green with a veil and a conical bamboo hat. Although one couldn't see her countenance clearly, just from her demeanor and figure, it was enough to cause one's imagination to run wild. Maybe, this was a peak-level beauty. When Qin Wenyin left the battle sword sect, Qin was actually willing to follow him. Although Qin Wenyin was somewhat taken aback, he was naturally more than happy to do so. You good for nothing, we are so light yet you still say you're tired? We raised you for nothing. Qin Wenyin rapped little rascal on its head. You two, villains colluding together to bully me. Little rascal whimpered, his words causing many in the surroundings to turn their gazes over in bewilderment. Little rascal is so amusing. A maiden laughed. What are you looking at? I've never seen such an adorable demonic beast before. Little rascal spoke in a babyish voice, causing Qin Wenyan's face to be filled with black lines. He discovered that little rascal learning how to speak wasn't a joyous matter at all. Indeed, I've never seen him before. Little rascal, what are you doing here in the sacred royal city? That maiden laughed. I'm here to suppress the geniuses and shake the world with my name. Little rascal, tyrannically, spoke, causing the people in the surroundings to snicker. Everywhere he passed by, he would definitely become the target of attention. Qin Wenyan's face turned black as he stared at little rascal's bragging. He already regretted bringing him along. Initially, he wanted to keep a low profile, but who would have thought that he would be tricked by little rascal? Can you stop? Qin Wenyin gave little rascal a ruthless slap on the face as he walked on the streets. Sir, if you don't like it, just give it to me. At this moment, a voice drifted over. After which, Qin Wenyin saw a gigantic Yuan meteor stone appearing in front of him. This Yuan meteor stone was filled with an incomparably dense astral energy. Not only that, it wasn't polished to a standard size, it was completely natural. Qin Wenyin turned his head, only to see a young man pointing to the Yuan meteor stone. Leave that demonic beast to me, this Yuan meteor stone is yours. Chapter 613. Qin Wenyin glanced at the young man and instantly knew his cultivation base. He was at the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper, and there was a hint of arrogance in the center of his brows. Behind him, there was a maiden clad in a purplish-red dress that accentuated her figure to perfection. Her long hair was tied up in a bun, and the excess strands of her hair cascaded downwards, revealing her fair neck. Her skin was as smooth as water, and she exuded a sense of nobility and elegance. The eyes of this maiden gleamed with a bright light as she stared at little rascal who was in the form of a white tiger. Everyone understood that this young man wanted this demonic beast because he wanted to gain the favor of this maiden. Sorry, I don't wish to trade yet. Qin Wenyin waved his hands as the Yuan meteor stone flew back to the young man. The young man frowned as an expression of unhappiness appeared on his face. However, it only lasted for an instant before he relaxed and turned to Qin Wenyin. I'm Rong Yen from the Divine Weapon Academy, and this is my junior apprentice sister, Xinjing. She likes this demonic beast a lot, and since you don't like it, why don't you give it to me? If you don't want enough Yuan meteor stones, feel free to ask. So it's someone from the Divine Weapon Academy. They are all rich and overbearing fellows. The people in the surroundings mused in their hearts. The Divine Weapon Academy mainly nurtured Grandmaster weaponsmiths. After graduating from the academy, many of them would become 5th-ranked weaponsmiths, and these people were all extremely wealthy. For those who were proficient in weaponsmithing, there was no one who wasn't wealthy. Divine Weapon Academy. A bright light flashed in Qin Wenyan's eyes. This time around, he came to the sacred royal city with the intention of finding a weaponsmithing place. What he needed now was a huge sum of wealth, and weaponsmithing was undoubtedly the fastest method. Upon seeing the bright light in Qin Wenyan's eyes, a hint of disdain flickered in Rong Yan's eyes. Indeed, even in the sacred royal city, the Divine Weapon Academy was extremely famous. Many people would do all they could to befriend these future Grandmaster weaponsmiths. Seems like this young man was no exception. The look in his eyes changed after hearing his identity. My name is Tianwen, a nameless character. I heard that there would be a grand battle between geniuses on the sacred battle platform in the royal sacred region, hence I traveled a great distance just to spectate. Qin Wenyan laughed. Little rascal who was beside him rolled its eyes, silently cursing at how shameless this fellow was. He actually claimed to be a supreme genius? Too shameless. The arranged battle between Qin Wenyan and Di Shi has indeed caused quite a commotion. Right now, there are already many people rushing over. I'm sure the battle will be extremely fascinating. Rong Yen nodded, yet his gaze was still fixed on Little Rascal. Qin Wenyan glanced at the little fellow beside him, and a sinister smile flashed across his eyes. The little fellow shuddered at the sight of it. What was this guy thinking? My little demon is disobedient. If Miss Shen likes it, I can let it play with Miss Shen. When Miss Shen is tired of it, you can return it to me. Qin Wenyan stared at the two of them as though he was looking at a treasure. Qin Wenyan was naturally happy that they were here to deliver a treasure to him. Shen Jing's brows twitched. She could feel that Qin Wenyan was scheming something. The look in his eyes made her feel extremely uncomfortable. But at this moment, the body of the little white tiger actually shrunk as it transformed into a beam of light and rushed into her bosom. Shen Jing was startled. Staring at the pure and adorable eyes of the little white tiger, a faint feeling of love blossomed in her heart. Beautiful sister, you are so beautiful. Little Rascal spoke in a baby-like voice, causing Shen Jing to smile. Beautiful sister, your smile is so beautiful. Little Rascal crawled into Shen Jing's bosom, its little paws scratching everywhere. When Qin Wenyan saw this scene, his heart was filled with endless sympathy for Shen Jing. He couldn't help but think of the scene where Qing Er carried Little Rascal with one hand. It seemed like Qing Er knew this bastard very well. Shen Jing had never seen such an adorable little white tiger before. How could she think of anything else? Although there was a strange feeling in front of her chest, looking at the pair of innocent and adorable eyes, she didn't think too much about it. She rubbed Little Rascal's head and said, "How could there be such a cute little demon?" He actually dared to lay his hands on it. Yes, he is so bad. He has no ability, his cultivation is weak, and he even made me starve. Little Rascal blinked his eyes as though he was about to cry. Although his tone was still immature, his words were getting clearer and clearer. Shen Jing glanced at Qin Wenyan coldly, but coincidentally saw Qin Wenyan looking at her. There seemed to be a strange light in his eyes, causing Shen Jing to feel even more unhappy. Was he coveting her again? Miss Shen, I wish to learn weaponsmithing. I wonder if you can introduce me to you? Qin Wenyan spoke, causing Shen Jing's impression of Qin Wenyan to worsen. Rong Yen, who was beside her, arrogantly glanced at Qin Wenyan. So it turned out that Qin Wenyan had such a motive. He then coldly stated, I can introduce you to me, but it isn't so simple to become a student of the Divine Weapon Academy. Maybe you can start as an apprentice, I can arrange it for you. The people in the surroundings all had expressions of interest on their faces. Although the students of the Divine Weapon Academy were of high status, the apprentices were merely people who ran errands. Once the students of the Divine Weapon Academy were unhappy, they would be beaten and scolded. This Rong Yen was intentionally suppressing this apprentice. Shen Jing had a satisfied expression on her face when she heard Rong Yan's words, as she calmly stared at Qin Wenyan. Sure, if that's the case, I'll have to thank you. Qin Wenyan acted as though he didn't know what the other party was thinking. A smile appeared on his face, yet he was coldly laughing in his heart. Did they really want him to become an apprentice in the Divine Weapon Academy? If he really wanted to forge weapons, these two people in front of him would have to step aside. No worries. At this moment, the disdain in Rong Yan's eyes was unmasked. Someone who was willing to become an apprentice, what capabilities could he have? As for that little demon, as long as his junior apprentice sister Shen Jing liked him, why would he still need to return him? However, Rong Yen still had a trace of suspicion towards Qing Er, who was standing behind Qin Wenyan. He then asked, who is she? Why doesn't she want to show her face to others? My younger sister, her body is weak, she wouldn't be able to withstand the cold, Qin Wenyan casually replied. Although Rong Yen wouldn't believe him, he couldn't be bothered to question further. Let's go. Shen Jing walked over. She didn't even glance at Qin Wenyan, directly walking past Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan and Qing Er followed behind. As for little rascal, it was currently lying in Shinjing's embrace, enjoying himself. Qin Wenyin felt a sense of guilt. The Divine Weapon Academy exuded a simple and unadorned aura. From the moment they entered, Qin Wenyin could already sense the fluctuations of divine inscriptions everywhere. Each and every one of the silvery white pillars exuded a mystical aura, as though they were divine weapons forged from divine inscriptions. "Follow me closely." Rong Yen walked in front, instructing Qin Wenyin. After informing the guards, he could only bring Qin Wenyin into the academy. Academies were different from sections. Sects were stricter, while academies were more relaxed. Hence, Rong Yen could easily bring Qin Wenyin into the academy. "Let's go to the weaponsmithing pagoda to take a look. The year-end weaponsmithing examination is coming soon. Everyone should be there, right?" Shinjing spoke in a low voice. Rong Yen nodded his head and smiled. "Given junior sister's talent in weaponsmithing, you should be able to forge a top-grade 4th-ranked divine weapon. You definitely won't disappoint, teacher." Shinjing declined to comment. The group of them arrived at the public square. In the center of the public square, there was a weaponsmithing pagoda. The pagoda was separated into tens of levels, and each level had several slots for weaponsmithing. This pagoda was like a divine weapon, exuding a terrifying heat. The entire pagoda is filled with terrifyingly high-temperature flames. There's basically no need to worry about the problem of flames when forging weapons here. As long as one is a weaponsmith, they would be able to directly start the forging process. How unique! Qin Wenyin stared at the pagoda. The higher they went, the fewer slots there were. However, the weaponsmiths seemed to be more and more powerful, and many people were looking up to them. Senior brother Wang Yunfei is still as amazing as ever. He can already forge top-grade 4th-ranked divine weapons. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation base is restricted, he might even have a chance to forge 5th-ranked divine weapons. In the future, he would definitely become a 5th-ranked weaponsmith grandmaster. Shenjing's gaze landed on the silhouette of a young man at the top of the pagoda, as a hint of admiration flashed in her eyes. In the Heavenly Dipper realm, the person she admired the most in the Divine Weapon Academy was none other than senior brother Wang Yunfei. Not only was his weaponsmithing abilities outstanding, his combat prowess was extremely high as well. He was simply a perfect heavens chosen. Indeed. Rong Yen nodded his head. A trace of jealousy flashed in his heart. However, he couldn't deny how outstanding Qin Wenyin was. "Junior Sister Moon, you are here as well." At this moment, Rong Yen noticed a young girl standing beside him, as a radiant smile appeared on his face. This girl had a lackluster countenance, and was clad in simple robes. Although her features were delicate and pretty, when she stood beside Shinjing, she appeared somewhat dim. Shinjing was clad in a purplish-red dress, and the magnificence she exuded caused her to lower her head slightly. Senior brother Rong Yen, Moon replied in a low voice. "Junior sister, I heard that you don't have an apprentice for weaponsmithing. This is extremely inconvenient. Today, I found one for you from outside. I will hand him over to you." Rong Yen spoke to Moon as he pointed to Qin Wenyin. Moon glanced at Qin Wenyin as a gentle smile appeared on her face. She nodded her head. "Okay, thank you, senior brother Rong Yen. No worries, you can bring him to your weaponsmithing pavilion." Rong Yen smiled. Moon didn't say anything. She turned to Qin Wenyin and smiled. "My name is Moon." "Tianwen." Qin Wenyin nodded his head. "Tianwen, come with me." Moon brought Qin Wenyin away. Qin Wenyin saw that Rong Yen and Shinjing didn't even glance at him, let alone returning little rascal to him. "Tianwen, why did you come here to be an apprentice? It's basically impossible to learn anything from a weaponsmith. It's impossible to hope that a weaponsmith would teach you divine inscriptions." After walking for some distance, Moon stared at Qin Wenyin with some worry in her eyes. "Also, at your age, if you are just starting out, it's best if you don't learn divine inscriptions." Qin Wenyin stared at Moon's eyes. Although Moon wasn't as breathtaking as Shinjing, she was still very delicate and pretty. That pair of spirited eyes exuded a pure sense of beauty. If she changed her clothes and dressed up seriously, she wouldn't lose out to Xinjing by much. Is it very difficult to obtain divine inscriptions here? Qin Wendian asked. He naturally understood the importance of divine inscriptions. Normally speaking, who would teach you the divine inscriptions they were proficient in? The Divine Weapon Academy is only an academy, not your home. Let alone a weaponsmith apprentice. Even if you are a student, they wouldn't give you access to all divine inscriptions. Only after you have achieved a certain level of results would they choose to give you access to divine inscriptions. I've been here for almost a year and I still haven't obtained any divine inscriptions that surpassed my own standards. However, if I perform well in the examination this time around, I might have a chance. Moon's eyes gleamed with a bright light. Evidently, she had been waiting for this day for a very long time. Chapter 614. Qin Wenyin stared at the light in Moon's eyes as he involuntarily laughed. Seems like you are quite confident. Upon hearing his words, Moon's countenance dimmed. She lowered her head as though there was something weighing on her heart as she mumbled, "But I'm afraid I won't be able to obtain a good result. After all, the strength of the divine inscriptions I'm proficient in is limited. Although I've been working hard to raise my proficiency in inscribing divine inscriptions, there's no way for me to make up for the disparity in divine inscriptions. I will definitely be left in the dust by Xinjing and Rong Yan. Can I watch you inscribe divine inscriptions?" Qin Wenyin asked, his words causing Moon to smile as she nodded her head. "Sure, if you want to learn my divine inscriptions, I will teach you. As for how much you can learn, that would depend on your own comprehension. Also, is she here to learn weaponsmithing as well?" Moon pointed to Qing as she asked. "She's my younger sister, little Qing. She came here together with me." Qin Wendian smiled. As the two of them spoke, they had already arrived at Moon's weaponsmithing pavilion. Although the place wasn't too big, it had all the necessary materials and there was even heat from the ground. This caused Moon to have an apologetic look on her face as she smiled at Qin Wenyin. "I've only been in the academy for a year, hence the conditions of my weaponsmithing pavilion are the worst. That Rong Yan seems to be up to no good. His and Xinjing's weaponsmithing pavilion is better than mine, yet he arranged for you to learn from me. I feel that it's pretty good. If I learned from them, they would definitely not teach me divine inscriptions." Qin Wendian smiled radiantly. Staring at his smile, Moon also smiled. "Your smile is so beautiful and your demeanor isn't bad either. I really don't understand why you want to be a weaponsmithing attendant." As she spoke, she had already started to prepare the materials needed for forging a 4th-ranked divine weapon. Forging a 4th-ranked divine weapon wasn't the same as forging a 1st-ranked or 2nd-ranked divine weapon. The requirements for the quality of the materials used were extremely strict. If not, even if ordinary divine weapons were imbued with powerful divine imprints, if the materials used weren't sturdy enough when clashing, they would be at a disadvantage and could easily break apart due to instability. The temperature of the flames needed to smelt high-grade crafting materials is extremely high. Fortunately, there is a heavenly flame below the crafting pavilion, which shrouds the entire crafting pavilion area of the academy. Even 5th-grade crafting materials can be smelted, let alone 4th-grade materials. Moon spoke to Qin Wenyin, after which, she placed all the materials she had prepared into the central cauldron and began to burn them. At the same time, she turned to Qin Wenyin and said, "Help me retrieve the embryonic form of the axe." "You want to forge a divine great axe?" Qin Wendian laughed. Weaponsmithing was the same as the martial path. There were countless variations. Similarly, one had to gather materials, heat it, cast it, inscribe divine inscriptions, and finally sharpen it into a divine weapon. For a high-grade divine weapon, the requirements for the materials, combination, and divine inscriptions were all much higher. There couldn't be a single mistake, or it would be easy to end up with a defective weapon. You should already know these basic steps, right? Both the materials and forging process, practice makes perfect. After thousands and thousands of tempering, in addition to your powerful perception, you would be able to gradually perfect your weapon. The most important step is the inscribing of divine inscriptions. That is the step that determines the level of a weaponsmith's ability. Moon slowly explained. She continued to forge while chatting with Qin Wenyin, guiding Qin Wenyin on how to forge weapons. Qin Wenyin stared at the beads of sweat on Moon's forehead as a smile appeared on his face. Xin Jing and Rong Yen had sent him to Moon's place, causing him to feel extremely happy. Moon was indeed more suitable to help him. After a period of time, the smelted materials were infused into the embryonic form of the great axe, allowing it to solidify before placing the embryonic form onto the forging stone. Moon then slammed her palm onto the embryonic form of the great axe, causing it to shatter, revealing an axe head that was scorched red. I'm going to inscribe divine inscriptions, watch carefully. A bright light flashed as a hatchet appeared in Moon's hands. One of her astral souls was a great axe, a forging-type astral soul. After which, the hatchet in Moon's hands chopped out, slamming onto the hatchet on the forging platform. Instantly, numerous runic inscriptions appeared, faintly exuding the will of the hatchet. Moon was extremely careful in her inscribing. She didn't even bother to chat with Qin Wenyin. She was completely focused and used a total of 4 hours before she finished inscribing the divine inscriptions. Moon, your foundations in weaponsmithing are truly solid. Not only that, your inscribing ability is also very powerful. If there's a great teacher around, you would definitely have a bright future ahead of you. Qin Wenyin spoke. Moon smiled sweetly, her face was covered in sweat. How can it be as simple as you think? The majority of powerful weaponsmiths are extremely arrogant, and the divine weapons I forge aren't of a high grade. It's very hard for me to attract the attention of others. Could it be that I can summon a Grandmaster-level character to observe me forging? I can only wait and see if anyone would pay attention to me during the year-end examinations. Although there won't be any powerful Grandmaster-level characters, there might be some weaponsmiths with good foresight. Qin Wenyin shrugged. Do you mind if I use this hatchet? You. Moon blinked, glancing at the hatchet again. A mid-grade, 4th-ranked divine weapon. Although it's a pity, you can do it. Qin Wenyin nodded. After which, he walked forward as a hammer appeared in his hand, directly smashing down on the hatchet. The sound of metal colliding rang out as the divine inscriptions on the hatchet were directly flattened. This caused Moon to be stunned as she stared resentfully at Qin Wenyin. Although it was only a mid-grade divine weapon, she was extremely poor and didn't have many materials to forge it. How could she bear to waste it like this? However, she could only hope that after Qin Wenyin messed around once, he would understand the difficulty of weaponsmithing. Ding! Another light sound rang out as the hammerhead smashed into the hatchet. A resplendent light flashed as the hatchet exuded a terrifying sharpness. On the surface of the hatchet, an incomparably complex and exquisite divine inscriptions could be seen. This scene caused Moon to be dumbfounded. Her small hands covered her mouth as she stared at Qin Wenyin. Her beautiful eyes didn't move as her brain short-circuited. This weaponsmithing technique caused her heart to pound unceasingly. Moon pointed at Qin Wenyin. Upon seeing the mischievous smile in Qin Wenyan's eyes, she suppressed her shock and pouted. You are so powerful, yet you still dare to tease me? Moon, can you help me with something? Qin Wenyin spoke. Seeing the serious look on his face, Moon bewilderedly asked, Your weaponsmithing abilities are so high, what can I help you with? Although my divine inscriptions are powerful, I don't have much research on weaponsmithing. Right now, I need a large number of divine weapons, but I can't find a suitable place to do so. I hope you can help me. Qin Wenyin spoke. Moon blinked before she nodded, sure. Being able to forge weapons together with such a powerful weaponsmith, how could Moon reject? Okay then. Moon, refine all the materials that can be used to forge divine weapons. I will forge them into divine weapons and after that, you can go outside to help me trade for more materials, repeating the cycle. At the same time, remember to prepare more weapon embryos. Qin Wenyin spoke. Moon instantly understood what Qin Wenyin wanted to do. Given Qin Wenyan's inscription speed, as long as the other steps and materials were sufficient, he would be able to forge a large number of weapons. And since he came to the Divine Weapon Academy, it was naturally because he knew that the Divine Weapon Academy had its own trading network that could provide all these for him. Weaponsmiths are all wealthy. For a weaponsmith like you, the amount of wealth you can create is simply unimaginable. Moon mumbled, her words causing Qin Wentian's eyes to flicker. He smiled. Right now, it's precisely because I'm poor that I need to forge weapons. Other than divine weapons, I also need to trade for some useful items. That's why I thought of this method. Fine, you will only be poor for a period of time. Given your standard, as long as you step into the celestial phenomenon realm, it wouldn't be too much of a problem for you to forge 5th-ranked divine weapons. Moon felt somewhat jealous of this fellow in front of her. He was simply too powerful. As for why he couldn't forge 5th-ranked divine weapons, it was most probably due to the limitations of his cultivation base. After all, the majority of 5th-ranked divine inscriptions contained a true intent within them. Unless one was at the celestial phenomenon realm, it would be impossible for them to inscribe 5th-ranked divine inscriptions. Moon, your foundation is so solid, you will also become a powerful weaponsmith in the future. Qin Wentian laughed. Moon shook her head. How can I be as impressive as you? You still have me. Qin Wentian winked at Moon, causing Moon's expression to stiffen. Her gaze towards Qin Wentian contained traces of nervousness and anticipation as her heart pounded wildly. I'll help you prepare the forging materials. Moon blushed. She didn't dare to meet Qin Wentian's gaze. After which, she walked away to prepare the forging materials for Qin Wentian. The two of them began to forge weapons in the weaponsmith pavilion, and after they were done, Moon would bring the divine weapons forged by Qin Wentian outside to trade. At the same time, she would borrow weapon embryos from her fellow apprentice brothers and sisters in the academy. This caused many to feel puzzled. What happened to Moon recently? She borrowed over 100 weapon embryos within 2 days. During these 2 days, Moon was completely exhausted. Other than running errands for Qin Wentian taught her peak-tier 4th-ranked divine inscriptions as well as the method to inscribe divine inscriptions. Other than helping Qin Wentian, she would also mingle around in the weaponsmith pavilion to learn and attempt to inscribe divine inscriptions. Just like what Qin Wentian had expected, Moon's foundation was extremely solid. With his help, her improvement would be extremely quick. It wouldn't be long before she would be able to inscribe a peak-tier 4th-ranked divine weapon. However, although she was tired, Moon had never been so happy before. Now that she had a peak-tier divine inscription, the method to forge weapons was even better, and Qin Wentian had given her a lot of materials, all of which could be used to forge peak-tier 4th-ranked divine weapons. Occasionally, when she rested during the night, a smile would appear on Moon's face. Her hard work had finally paid off. She had met such a good person. Although he wanted her help, what Qin Wentian had given her wasn't something that could be compared to this little bit of help. She naturally understood this point in her heart. Towards Qin Wentian, she only felt heartfelt gratitude. 5 days later, Moon once again went out to help Qin Wentian exchange materials. When she passed by the weaponsmithing pagoda, she met Shinjing and Rong Yan. Little Rascal was still as carefree and happy as ever, lying in Shinjing's embrace. Rong Yan glanced at Moon as he smiled. Junior sister, is that apprentice weaponsmith obedient? Moon's face flashed with a bright light as she nodded. Junior sister, if you don't like him, you can just tell him to scram. I'm not that familiar with him anyway. Rong Yan's lips curled up in contempt. As for Little Rascal, it was already impossible for him to return to Shinjing. Even Little Rascal himself couldn't bear to leave, right? Moon coldly glanced at Rong Yan. She didn't say anything and directly walked away. Rong Yan started. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he stared at her departing back. This yes-man actually dared to look at him in such a manner? However, the current Moon gave him a strange feeling. Her demeanor and confidence seemed to have increased, and she was even more beautiful than before. Moon returned to the weaponsmithing pavilion and saw that Qin Wentian was still forging weapons. She took out a handkerchief and wiped the sweat off his forehead, only to see Qin Wentian smiling at her. Moon blushed as she retracted her hand. I don't have any other intentions. Qin Wendian casually smiled. Staring at the smile in his deep eyes, Moon involuntarily felt a sense of inferiority. Although they had only been in contact for 5 days, she could sense that Qin Wenyan was definitely an extraordinary character. If not, how could he have such powerful weaponsmithing techniques and such magnanimity? Even if he liked women, they would surely be those that were as dazzling as phoenixes, right? When she thought of this, Moon put down her previous thoughts and didn't think too much about it. She didn't dare to think too much about it either. She could only innocently smile. Tianwen, the year-end examination will begin in a few days. Can you watch me finish the examination before you leave? Qin Wendian glanced at Moon. He originally planned to leave tomorrow, but when he saw the innocent look in her eyes, he smiled and nodded his head. Sure. Thank you. Moon was somewhat agitated, as though she suddenly thought of something. She then continued, after the year-end examination ends, the battle on the sacred battle platform will begin soon. I heard that Senior Brother Wang Yunfei also wishes to fight against Qin Wenyan. Senior Brother Wang is so powerful, I wonder what kind of heaven-chosen Qin Wenyan is? Is he as outstanding as Senior Brother Wang Yunfei? Regardless of weapon forging or combat, Senior Brother Wang Yunfei is so dazzling. Chapter 6:15. A strange smile involuntarily appeared on Qin Wenyan's face when he heard Moon mentioning him. After which, Moon smiled at him. What about you? You are so proficient in weaponsmithing, how's your combat prowess? This time around, many supreme geniuses will be participating in the sacred battle platform. Will you be going? Maybe, Qin Wenyan shrugged and smiled, but before that, I still have to make a trip to the Flying Immortal Tower. What do you want exactly? Why are you preparing so many top-tier 4th-ranked divine weapons? Moon blinked. A few days ago, Qin Wenyan asked her where he could trade for treasures in the sacred royal city. She told Qin Wenyan the Flying Immortal Tower. The sacred royal city was the largest transaction ground in the royal sacred region. Not only that, there weren't just a single trading power, there were many of them. The Flying Immortal Tower was one of them. The mysterious Flying Immortal Tower had an incomparably deep foundation. As long as you could pay a sufficient price, the Flying Immortal Tower would be able to take out the item you wanted. Sky Demon Oracle Bone. Qin Wenyan laughed in self-mockery. Moon's body trembled slightly as she stared at Qin Wenyan in disbelief. If it was an ordinary person, they might not have heard of this item before. But as a weaponsmith, how could she not know about this legendary item? It was rumored that the Sky Demon Oracle Bone could be used to forge Fiend God armors. It was a supreme treasure used to forge armors or defensive divine weapons. Even if you have many divine weapons, it's impossible for you to obtain the Sky Demon Oracle Bone. Moon spoke in a low voice. So what I want now is just some powder of the Sky Demon Oracle Bone. Qin Wendian shook his head with a bitter smile on his face. The Sky Demon Oracle Bone was a must-have item for cultivating the Fiend God Body Refinement art. If he wanted to establish his Fiend God Body Refinement art, he had to obtain this item first. I really don't know what you want to do. Moon's lips twitched. When are you going to the Flying Immortal Tower? I'll accompany you. No need, I can go there myself. You still have to prepare for the year-end examination. Qin Wendian smiled. Moon didn't insist and lightly nodded her head. The largest transaction center of the Royal Sacred Region was located in the Sacred Royal City, occupying an area of 1,000 miles. There were countless people coming and going, and celestial phenomenon ascendants could be seen everywhere. However, as the most mysterious and profound Flying Immortal Tower, there were not many people in this area. This was because the trading rules here were different from other places. Ordinary people preferred to go to the auction area or the trading area to try their luck, but the Flying Immortal Tower had its own independent trading rules. The Flying Immortal Inn was just a building, there were many pavilions on the left and right sides of the building, and there were many people stationed there. At this moment, a group of young men appeared below the Flying Immortal Inn. One of them waved his hand as a treasure flew into the inn. At the same time, he spoke, I want to exchange for a pair of spears. They must be at the peak of the 4th level, and it would be best if the spears are inscribed with both offensive and defensive divine weapons. Alright, come one day later. A voice rang out from within the flying immortal tower. The transaction was completed. Following that, the second person threw a treasure into the ascending immortal tower. He wanted to exchange it for a rare top-grade Tier 4 pill. These people seemed to be from the Cold Slaughter sect. Someone in the surroundings murmured when he saw the group of youths. The person who wants to exchange for the spears is Shui Yunfan from the Cold Slaughter sect. He's extremely powerful and is a heaven chosen with some fame. Someone stated, there were countless geniuses in the sacred royal city, and it was unknown how many heroes were gathered here. Hence, there were some geniuses who had extraordinary strength, but they were still unknown to the public. Not far away, a group of figures could be seen walking over, exuding an extraordinary aura. Why is Wang Yunfei here as well? I heard that he planned to go to the sacred battle platform to join in the fun. I wonder how his preparations are going? Upon seeing the young man in the lead, the gazes of the crowd froze. Wang Yunfei's fame wasn't small. Not only was his talent in the martial Dao high, his proficiency in weaponsmithing was also outstanding. Not far away from Wang Yunfei, there was another ordinary-looking man. This man looked extremely ordinary, and because of the conical bamboo hat he wore, his countenance couldn't be seen clearly. However, his eyes underneath the bamboo hat gleamed with sharpness. This man was none other than Qin Wenyan. He had met Wang Yunfei once before and was somewhat bewildered when he saw Wang Yunfei walking in front. However, he didn't think too much about it and continued walking forward. Not long after, Wang Yunfei's group arrived at the flying immortal tower. Shui Yunfan smiled at him. Wang Yunfei, you actually have something you lack? Who didn't know that weaponsmiths were wealthy? Wang Yunfei's proficiency in weaponsmithing was extraordinary. He definitely wouldn't lack ordinary treasures. Wang Yunfei faintly glanced at Shui Yunfan before shifting his gaze onto the flying immortal tower. After which, he waved his hands as over 10 divine weapons flew out, landing on the flying immortal tower. The divine weapons hummed as they shone resplendently, causing many to be startled. Wang Yunfei's actions were truly extraordinary. Change all of them to Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder. Wang Yunfei spoke. Come back 3 days later. A voice rang out from the flying immortal tower. Wang Yunfei nodded. It wasn't strange for there to be Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder here. What armor do you want to forge? You actually need Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder? An expression of interest appeared on Shui Yunfan's face as he stared at Wang Yunfei. Qin Wenyan, who was walking behind him, also had a strange expression on his face. He didn't expect that Wang Yunfei wanted the same thing as him. However, Wang Yunfei wanted to forge a weapon. Qin Wenyan walked up and waved his hands. In an instant, terrifying whistling sounds rang out as numerous divine weapons gleamed with a dazzling light. These divine weapons were arranged in rows, causing the eyes of everyone to feel pain. The hearts of the people in the surroundings couldn't help but to tremble as they stared at the figure in the bamboo hat. Wasn't the actions of this man a little too tyrannical? Change all of them to Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder. Qin Wentian's low voice rang out. The flying immortal tower fell silent for a moment. At the same time, Qin Wenyan could clearly sense an extremely tyrannical perception sweeping past him. It should be a celestial phenomenon ascendant. They naturally had to clearly sense the appearance and aura of the person making the transaction so that they wouldn't be falsely claimed by someone else when they came back next time. Please wait a moment. A voice rang out. It was as though there was no way to ascertain if they had enough Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder. At this moment, Wang Yunfei stared at Qin Wenyan, his eyes gleaming with sharpness as he asked, Sir, why do you need so much Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder? Qin Wenyan glanced at Wang Yunfei. He didn't reply. Wang Yunfei had no way to ascertain who Qin Wenyan was, and he didn't dare to be too impudent. Seeing that Qin Wenyan didn't reply, he didn't continue speaking. He was thinking in his heart, who would be able to take out so many divine weapons? Also, this person should only be a heavenly dipper sovereign. Come back 3 days later. An instant later, a voice rang out from the flying immortal tower. Qin Wenin nodded his head as he turned and departed. However, he didn't leave this transaction ground. Instead, he chose to roam around, searching for other items he needed to trade. After all, he had enough divine weapons on him to trade. A few hours later, Qin Wenin returned to the Divine Weapon Academy. He continued forging weapons while at the same time guiding Moon. Although he didn't have a use for so many divine weapons, he could use them to exchange for yuan meteor stones or other treasures. Who would dislike having too many? 3 days later, when Qin Wenin came back to collect the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder, he discovered that Wang Yunfei and Shui Yunfan, whom he met before, were both here. When they saw him, their gazes turned to him as though they were waiting for him. This caused the eyes of Qin Wenin to gleam with sharpness. "I'm here to collect the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder." Qin Wenin spoke. "Yes." A voice rang out from the flying immortal tower. Qin Wenin slowly walked towards the window. After that person passed an interspatial ring to Qin Wenin. Qin Wenin received it and inspected it, cursing silently in his heart. Wasn't the price of the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder a little too high? There was actually so little of it. You can also come and collect it, but the price might be slightly lower. The Flying Immortal Tower will return a few divine weapons to you. A voice spoke to Wang Yunfei, causing Wang Yunfei's countenance to turn incredibly unsightly. The rules of the Flying Immortal Tower were like this. Usually, as long as you agreed, you would get the items you wanted. But if there was someone else who had even better items to exchange for the items, the Flying Immortal Tower would give priority to that person. If the items you offered were insufficient, the Flying Immortal Tower would return the items you offered. Back then, the number of divine weapons Qin Wenin took out was too much, hence, he was given priority over Wang Yunfei. Wait a minute. Just when Qin Wenin wanted to leave, Wang Yunfei, who was the owner of the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder, called out to him. Qin Wenin halted his steps only to hear Wang Yunfei speaking. "I'll pay double the price and exchange with you. How about it?" "Not exchanging." Qin Wenin faintly spoke as he lifted his foot and departed. A person beside Shui Yunfan had a sharp look in his eyes. He spoke to Shui Yunfan. "This man's cultivation base is at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper." A cold light flashed in Shui Yunfan's eyes as he laughed. "Brother Wang, did you hear that?" Wang Yunfei swept his gaze over to Shui Yunfan and the others. There were quite a few experts here. He instantly knew what they wanted to do. He coldly snorted. How could he allow himself to be used by Shui Yunfan? Their target was clearly Qin Wenin. They even brought people who could probe his cultivation base. Although he didn't care about Shui Yunfan, he wouldn't be so foolish as to help Shui Yunfan probe his cultivation base. And as expected, seeing that Wang Yunfei didn't move, Shui Yunfan and the others stepped out, directly surrounding Qin Wenin. Qin Wenin initially wanted to leave after obtaining the item. After all, according to the rules of the Flying Immortal Tower, as long as you obtain the item, you would no longer have anything to do with the Flying Immortal Tower. Right now, he was locked onto by Shui Yunfan and the others. With a sweep of his perception, he was able to determine the cultivation bases of his opponents. There were 5 to 6 8th-level Heavenly Dipper Sovereigns and 3 9th-level Heavenly Dipper Sovereigns. Such a lineup was truly well prepared. Qin Wenin furrowed his brows as he coldly spoke. "What do you guys want?" "Leave that interspatial ring behind." Shui Yunfan coldly spoke. He had personally seen Qin Wenin using so many divine weapons to exchange for it. The value of that interspatial ring was equivalent to over 100 top-grade 4th-ranked divine weapons. And for him, Shui Yunfan, he had only obtained a single top-grade 4th-ranked divine weapon 2 days ago. "I can't do it." Qin Wenin faintly spoke, yet a terrifying aura gushed forth from Shui Yunfan. He stared at Qin Wenin with disdain as killing intent flashed in his eyes. "Why must you do this?" Killing intent flashed in Shui Yunfan's eyes. In the sacred royal city, there weren't many who would dare to openly rob others. After all, those who dared to come here for a transaction all had their own capabilities. Qin Wentian's identity was unknown. If it wasn't for the fact that the items on him were too valuable, The people from the Cold Slaughter sect wouldn't have dared to take such a risk. Abruptly, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he soared up into the air. Shui Yunfan's countenance drastically changed as he blasted out with both his spears, akin to dragons of rage howling as a fearsome killing intent gushed forth. Qin Wenyan pointed his finger in the air as a formless sword intent enveloped the entire space, terrifying to the extreme. In that instant, Shui Yunfan's entire body trembled. He felt as though he was in the midst of a terrifying killing intent. He involuntarily stared at Qin Wenyan with trepidation in his eyes. Qin Wentian's finger landed as a piercing sound rang out. Shui Yunfan's entire body was pierced through by a sharp sword as blood flowed from the center of his brows. His eyes were wide open as he died with everlasting regret. Chapter 616. Right now, the heaven-breaking finger was unleashed by Qin Wentian's will at the perfection boundary of the Tao of Swords, in addition to his own comprehension of the Tao of Swords. How terrifying was the might of this finger! Shui Yunfan, who was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, was instantly killed. In that instant, those experts from the Cold Slaughter sect who were exuding tyrannical auras were all stunned. They stared at Qin Wenyan with killing intent flickering in their eyes. This man was indeed at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper, yet his combat prowess was actually so tyrannical. That finger strike of his was so tyrannical that it was completely unreasonable, instantly killing Shui Yunfan. Such a domineering aura caused the experts from the Cold Slaughter sect to pause momentarily. They were all invited here by Shui Yunfan, and a Heavenly Dipper sovereign who possessed hundreds of top-tier 4th-ranked divine weapons. It was extremely difficult for them to not be moved. However, this man didn't seem to be a pushover. I have no intention of killing anyone. If you don't want to die, don't antagonize me. Qin Wentian spoke. He wore the bamboo hat so that he wouldn't attract attention. Since Shui Yunfan dared to rob the divine weapons, he would kill him first to deter the others. If these people were stubborn, he could only kill them. As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wentian turned and departed. His steps were light and agile. His face hidden under the bamboo hat couldn't be seen. The spectators in the surroundings all stared at the scene that just happened. After which, they turned their gazes onto the experts from the Cold Slaughter sect. There were so many of them, yet they were all intimidated by a mere 7th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign. What should we do? An expert from the Cold Slaughter sect asked. Forget it, since this man is so confident, he must be someone extraordinary. That divine weapon is a hot potato. A 9th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereign replied. An expert at the side narrowed his eyes as he stared at the disappearing silhouette of Qin Wenyan. What a pity! Although Qin Wenyan had killed Shui Yunfan in a single strike, they didn't think that Qin Wenyan would be able to fight against so many of them. They were only worried that Qin Wenyan would dare to come to the Flying Immortal Tower to conduct a transaction in front of so many people. Furthermore, killing Shui Yunfan was a decisive and ruthless move. It was better not to take any risks. In a city like the Saint Royal City, being cautious was the #1 rule of survival. Wang Yunfei cast a deep glance at Qin Wenyan, but he didn't have any thoughts of snatching it away. He was only thinking in his heart that only a small amount of the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder was needed to forge a supremely powerful defensive divine weapon, yet this person wanted too much. Could it be that he wanted to forge a defensive divine weapon in batches? Qin Wenyan naturally didn't want to forge a defensive divine weapon. If he succeeded in cultivating the Fiend God Body Refinement realm, his physique would be even more terrifying than divine weapons. After returning to the resting area that Moon had arranged for him, Qin Wenyan closed his eyes as his entire body shone with a dazzling astral light. He executed the incantation and stretched his palms out, grabbing onto the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder. After which, his palms transformed into a fearsome vortex, directly absorbing the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder into his body. An intense pain gushed forth from his arms. Qin Wenyan gritted his teeth and endured it. This was only the entry level of this incantation. In the future, this incantation would be even more tyrannical. The Sky Demon Oracle Bone was rumored to be a supreme defensive divine weapon. Even its powder could be used to forge a supremely powerful defensive divine weapon. One could very well imagine how tough it was. However, Qin Wenyin actually wanted to use his flesh and blood to refine it into his body. From this, one could very well imagine how tyrannical it was. Qin Wenyin was busy with his cultivation, while the people of the Divine Weapon Academy were busy with the forging of divine weapons. During these few days, Moon immersed herself in the forging of divine weapons, doing her best to digest everything Qin Wenyin taught her. She was doing her best to prepare for the year-end examinations. Unknowingly, the year-end examinations of the Divine Weapon Academy had finally arrived. Today, the atmosphere of the Divine Weapon Academy was extremely lively. In the public square of the Divine Weapon Academy, the surroundings of the weaponsmithing pagoda were filled with students. Above the public square, there was a spectator stand where the elders of the academy sat, observing the year-end examinations of the students. Qin Wenyin, Qing'er and Moon were preparing to set off. Moon smiled at Qin Wenyin. "Thank you for watching me participate in the year-end examinations." "It's not like I'm busy." Qin Wenyin shrugged. "Future Grandmaster Weaponsmith, in the future if I need help with anything, don't reject me. Naturally, as long as you need my help, I can continue forging weapons for you without any compensation." Moon smiled sweetly. The her now was indeed more confident, even her demeanor was different from before. Qin Wenyin propped up his chin as he stared at Moon, causing her to avert her gaze. However, Qin Wenyin only smiled. "Moon, I discovered that you are truly very beautiful. If you dress yourself up, you might even look prettier compared to Xinjing." Moon blushed as she replied, "Xinjing is so elegant, how can I be compared to her? She is elegant, you are pure and innocent. It's just that I thought you needed to dress yourself up properly. That way, coupled with your proficiency in weaponsmithing, you would be like a crane in a flock of chickens." Qin Wenyin spoke. "Do you really think so?" Moon's beautiful eyes stared at Qin Wenyin. Qin Wenyin naturally nodded his head. "In that case, wait for me." Moon smiled sweetly as she ran towards her room. Qin Wenyin waited for an entire hour before Moon walked out with her head lowered. Qin Wenyin stared at Moon in bewilderment. Right now, she was no longer wearing that simple and unadorned robe, and had changed into a pure white dress. Her fair neck and exquisite collarbones were revealed, and her jet-black hair flowed gracefully in front of her collarbones, exuding a sense of spirituality and purity. Moon shyly inclined her head, and upon seeing Qin Wenyin staring at her, her face grew even redder. However, she soon heard Qin Wenyin laughing. "Seems like my judgment isn't bad. If you walk out like this, in addition to your proficiency in weaponsmithing, you will definitely become an influential character in this examination. Let's go." Moon nodded her head and walked out together with Qin Wenyin. When they arrived at the public square of the Divine Weapon Academy, several gazes instantly landed on Moon, causing the expressions on the faces of many to turn extremely fascinating. "Is that Moon?" someone asked in disbelief. "Be more confident." Qin Wenyin laughed in a low voice when he saw that Moon was feeling a little awkward. Moon nodded her head and inclined her head as she walked forward gracefully. Her ample bosom seemed to be on the verge of bursting out, causing the eyes of many male students to flash with a strange light. A shocked voice rang out. Rong Yen stared at Moon and Qin Wenyin as a look of bewilderment flashed in his eyes. A few days ago, he already felt that Moon seemed to have changed, but he didn't expect that the cowardly and low-profile Moon would actually become so outstanding. He didn't even dare to believe his own eyes. Moon nodded lightly to Rong Yen before shifting her gaze onto the weaponsmithing pagoda. She didn't have a favorable impression of Rong Yen. "Moon, why are you so late? The examination has already started and there are already many people forging weapons in the pagoda." Rong Yen walked towards Moon as he smiled. This scene caused Xinjing, who was originally standing beside him, to frown as a look of unhappiness flashed in her eyes. "Don't worry, today is the day of the examination," Moon replied in a light voice. The examination at the end of the year was actually a chance for the students of the Divine Weapon Academy to display themselves. All fourth-ranked inscriptionists had the opportunity to go up and forge weapons. There would be people in the academy who would record your proficiency in weaponsmithing and decide how much resources you would be given. In addition, some of the more outstanding ones would even be taken in as disciples by the elders of the academy. Moon, your proficiency in weaponsmithing is also not bad. Let's wait for the next batch. I heard that Wang Yunfei is preparing to go up. Moon didn't reply to the sudden change in Rong Yan's attitude, but Qin Wendian laughed. Moon, I feel the same way as well. Moon glanced at Qin Wendian, understanding that he wanted her to attract the attention of more people. After all, there would be many elders paying attention to Wang Yunfei's weaponsmithing. Being in the same batch as Qin Wendian would also attract a lot of attention. Okay. Moon smiled at Qin Wendian, causing Rong Yan, who was at the side, to be in a daze. He involuntarily glanced at Qin Wendian as his countenance turned much colder. Moon, is this apprentice I gifted to you obedient? An unhappy expression flashed on Moon's face. She coldly glanced at Rong Yan. Rong Yan, have you always been so disrespectful? Before this, Rong Yan's tone when he spoke to her had always been arrogant and cold. But right now, his tone clearly contained the intent to humiliate Qin Wendian. What did he mean by the apprentice he gifted to her? Was Qin Wendian an object? Rong Yan frowned when he saw the cold look in Moon's eyes. Being questioned like this, his countenance naturally turned incredibly ugly. In addition, what sort of character was he, Rong Yan? He had always been extremely arrogant. Now that he treated Moon with respect, Moon actually berated him for the sake of Qin Wendian? Seeking trouble for yourself. A mocking voice drifted over. Xin Jing turned her gaze over, sweeping a glance at Rong Yan before turning to Moon. Do you really think you can transform into a phoenix just by dressing up a little? Given your level of weaponsmithing, it's best if you don't embarrass yourself. Qin Wendian calmly glanced at Xin Jing before turning to little rascal in her arms. Isn't it about time to return that little fellow to me? Shen Jing stared at Qin Wendian in bewilderment. A mocking look could be seen in her eyes. She gently stroked little rascal's snow-white skin as she mocked. A person like you isn't worthy of it. Why don't you ask it if it's willing to follow you? Qin Wendian laughed, glaring at little rascal. Why are you still not coming back? Little rascal popped its head out and with a ferocious leap, pounced onto Qin Wendian. Shen Jing's countenance turned cold as she coldly spoke. Return it to me. Qin Wendian ignored her. Rong Yan stared at Qin Wendian as a look of disdain flickered in his eyes. I want you to hand it over. Qin Wendian glanced at Rong Yan as a cold light flickered in his eyes, causing Rong Yan's heart to tremble violently. He stared at Qin Wendian. This place is the Divine Weapon Academy. The one who should scram is you. That's right, scram. Shen Jing similarly walked up, staring at Qin Wendian. She didn't expect that she would be betrayed by that little fellow. I will leave after this round of the weaponsmithing competition ends. Qin Wendian faintly spoke. Upon hearing his words, Moon coldly stared at Rong Yan and Xin Jing. Qin Wendian stayed behind because he wanted to watch her take the test, yet now he was being expelled. At this moment, a series of exclamations rang out. So it turned out that this round had ended. Wang Feiyun slowly walked up, arriving at the top of the pagoda, causing the crowd to exclaim in shock. Give me a little more time. Moon stared at Qin Wendian with an apologetic look in her eyes. After which, her silhouette flickered as she flew towards the top of the pagoda. This time around, the low-profile Moon actually directly ascended to the top of the pagoda, appearing beside Wang Yunfei. This scene caused many to furrow their brows. Didn't this Moon have too little self-awareness? However, at this moment, Moon's long dress fluttered in the wind, exuding an extraordinary aura. Her gaze turned over, staring at Rong Yan and Xin Jing below as she icily spoke. Rong Yan, Xin Jing, you two have insulted my friends. For the weaponsmithing examination this time around, let us compete. If my, Moon's, proficiency in weaponsmithing is inferior to yours, I will vanish from the Divine Weapon Academy. Chapter 617. Moon's voice caused the public square of the Divine Weapon Academy to fall silent. Many who recognized Moon all had strange expressions on their faces. A few days ago, Moon's behavior in the academy was already somewhat strange. And now, she even said such arrogant words. Rong Yen and Xin Jing were both extremely famous in the Divine Weapon Academy. Both of them could forge top-tier 4th-ranked divine weapons, and their proficiency in weaponsmithing was extraordinary. This Moon actually issued a challenge to Xin Jing and Rong Yen. It seemed that it was for the sake of her friend. Rong Yen and Xin Jing both felt bewildered. Xin Jing's beautiful eyes flashed with coldness as she stared at Qin Wenin. "It's best if you don't leave." After speaking, her silhouette soared up into the air as her violet dress fluttered in the wind. Her figure was graceful and beautiful, and she also appeared at the top level of the pagoda. She then spoke to Moon, "You don't know what's good for you." After which, she turned to Wang Yunfei as she smiled and nodded, "Senior." Wang Yunfei nodded. This Xin Jing's proficiency in weaponsmithing was extraordinary, and her background wasn't bad as well. In addition to her beauty, Wang Yunfei did have a favorable impression of her. However, Moon was a girl he had never paid attention to before. Regardless of demeanor or beauty, she wasn't in any way inferior to Xin Jing. Especially at this moment, the competitive intent radiating from her, and the coldness in her clear eyes made her even more attractive. Arrogant. Rong Yan's countenance grew incredibly unsightly as he stared at Qin Wenin. If you lose, let alone humiliating him, he might not even be able to walk out of the Divine Weapon Academy alive today. After speaking, he also soared up into the air, descending to the last seat at the top level of the pagoda. The 4 seats at the top level were all occupied by the 4 of them. The others also ascended the pagoda, all of them prepared to put on a good performance. This battle would surely attract the attention of many elders in the academy. Scorching heat permeated the air, and the people on the top level all took out the forging materials they had prepared beforehand. After which, they began to forge their weapons in the special area of the pagoda. The flames emanating from the equipment refining pagoda are connected to all the refining positions. Furthermore, they can control the temperature of the flames. This is amazing. Qin Wentian's eyes were emotionless as he quietly watched the people on the refining pagoda start to refine their weapons. Rong Yen and Xin Jing were not polite to him, but in fact, Qin Wentian did not care about them at all. They were just 2 passers-by, he did not care about them at all. As for Moon, she truly had a kind heart. Towards such a person he wouldn't be stingy with helping them out. In any case, Moon herself was also extremely outstanding. Tomorrow would be the day of his arranged battle with Disher. Maybe after today, he would never be able to meet Moon again. Qin Wenin silently admired Moon's forging. Each and every movement, each and every step, although they weren't that breathtaking, they were extremely solid. In this aspect, even he, Qin Wenin, felt ashamed of his own inferiority. Although his divine inscriptions were powerful, in other aspects, he truly couldn't be compared to Moon. Although Moon's performance wasn't that breathtaking, Qin Wenin believed that as long as the weaponsmiths of the academy weren't blind, they would be able to tell that Moon was a talent worth nurturing. This year's examination was at the end of the year. The seniors of the Divine Weapon Academy were spectating, and there would be people specially recording their forging process. Nobody dared to be careless, as this would determine what resources they would be able to obtain in the coming year. Everyone put their all into forging their own divine weapons, with no time to care about anything else. Wang Yunfei's side attracted the most gazes. He was forging a divine robe that was extremely thin. This type of divine weapon was exceedingly difficult to forge. One had to inscribe powerful defensive divine inscriptions on it to weaken the attacks of others. Wang Yunfei actually chose to forge such a divine weapon under such circumstances. From this, one could see how confident he was. Many of the weaponsmiths in the spectator stands had smiles on their faces. However, Wang Yunfei already had a master, and they had no hope of accepting him as a disciple. Shen Jing was forging a divine ruler, Rong Yen was forging a long spear, and Moon seemed to be forging a pair of divine feathers. This little doll's guts isn't small. Some of the weaponsmiths in the spectator stands stared at Moon. Forging a pair of divine feathers was definitely an extremely daring attempt. One must know that there was a time limit for the year-end examination. The examinees had to complete the forging of their divine weapons within the specified time limit. It was impossible for them to have unlimited time. It's time to inscribe the divine inscriptions. As long as this segment isn't messed up, Moon will defeat Xinjing and Rong Yen without any suspense. Qin Wendian laughed. The divine inscription Moon was preparing to inscribe was one of the divine inscriptions he taught her. It was a combination of offense and defense, as well as speed. It was exceedingly complex, and once it was inscribed, it would completely surpass Xinjing and Rong Yen. Moon's fingers were slightly longer, and her fair hands were extremely beautiful to look at. Not only that, her movements were extremely stable. She was completely focused on inscribing divine inscriptions, her heart as calm as still water. Right now, what she was thinking about wasn't how she would be valued by the elders or how she would be able to obtain the best resources in the academy. Rather, she was thinking about defeating Xinjing and Rong Yen, allowing Qin Wendian to gain respect. Time slowly flowed by, and as a beam of light flashed, Wang Yunfei was the first to complete the forging of his divine weapon, causing many to nod their heads in approval. After Wang Yunfei completed his forging, he turned his gaze onto Moon and Xinjing. Very swiftly his gaze froze. The divine inscriptions Moon was inscribing were extraordinary, and the materials she used were all of the highest quality. Clearly, she was aiming to forge a peak-tier 4th-ranked divine weapon. Wang Yunfei's countenance grew increasingly heavy. The beautiful eyes of Moon, who was clad in white, were filled with calmness. Sweat could be seen on her fair neck and collarbone, but that expression of concentration actually caused Wang Yunfei's heart to stir. Glancing at Xinjing again, there was a look of frustration in her eyes, as though she wasn't too satisfied with the divine weapon she forged. That arrogant look on her face was akin to a princess, completely different from Moon's demeanor. However, at this moment Wang Yunfei discovered that Moon, whom he had never paid attention to before, actually moved his heart even more compared to Xinjing. On top of the weaponsmithing pagoda, more and more people finished their forging. For a period of time, the entire pagoda was filled with the sharpness of divine weapons, as the humming sounds of weapons resonated unceasingly. It's done. At this moment, Rong Yen heaved a sigh of relief. His long spear had been successfully forged. I'm done as well, Xinjing faintly spoke. Her fire-colored ruler had been completed. The two of them glanced over at Moon, only to see her waiting for her divine weapon to cool down. Her beautiful wings exuded a sense of beauty. Xinjing sarcastically spoke, divine weapons aren't useful just because they look good. After speaking, she took out her own divine weapon and infused her astral energy into it. Instantly, terrifying flames gushed forth, resembling the roar of a flaming ferocious bird, terrifying to the extreme. A top-grade 4th-ranked divine weapon. Not only that, it can be considered not bad among the top-grade ones, Wang Yunfei faintly stated. Many thanks, senior. Xinjing elegantly smiled. Wang Yunfei lightly nodded his head. Rong Yen also infused his astral energy into his long spear, causing a terrifying sharpness to erupt forth from it. It was also a top-grade 4th-ranked divine weapon, comparable to Xinjing's. The two of them turned their gazes onto Moon only to see her waving her hands as a pair of wings appeared on her back. The pure white light radiating from the wings was so resplendent, slowly flapping. At this moment, Moon was like an angel, pure and flawless. Bzz. The wings fluttered as a terrifying silvery light erupted forth, resembling a silver-white ferocious bird soaring up into the skies, exuding a fearsome might that caused the hearts of Xinjing and Rong Yen to tremble. In the next instant, Moon's body floated up into the air. The pure white wings radiated a brilliant light as she stared at the dumbfounded Xinjing and Rong Yen. There was no need to say anything else. How can this be possible? Rong Yan's countenance was incredibly ugly to behold. The divine weapon forged by junior sister Moon is a peak-tier 4th-ranked one. Not only that, it has both offense and defense, and it also has an advantage in speed. It's far from something your divine weapon can compare to. Wang Yunfei faintly spoke. At this moment, Rong Yen stared at that angelic silhouette, silently cursing himself for being blind in the past. Why didn't he pursue such a girl? Shen Jing's countenance alternated between shades of green and white. She didn't expect things to turn out like this. Shen Jing, if you apologize to my friend together with Rong Yen, I can forget about this matter. Moon coldly spoke. Shen Jing was still as arrogant as ever. You want me to apologize to such a lowly person? Dream on. Moon, even if your weaponsmithing abilities aren't bad, you are only fit to be friends with such a person. Fine, from now onwards, scram out of the Divine Weapon Academy. Moon's countenance was ice cold. Shen Jing stared at Moon. The two beauties stared at each other. Wang Yunfei laughed when he saw this scene. Junior sister Moon, your weaponsmithing abilities are extraordinary. Later on, I will bring you to meet Master and beg him to accept you as a disciple. How about that? Moon's beautiful eyes flashed with surprise. Wang Yunfei's senior brother was a major character in the Divine Weapon Academy. A look of joy flashed in her eyes as she turned to Wang Yunfei. Many thanks, senior brother. No worries. Wang Yunfei smiled in a carefree manner. For such an outstanding woman like Moon, he naturally had some thoughts in his heart. Junior sister Shinjing, what grudge do you have with junior sister Moon? Why must you act like this? Why don't I help you resolve it? Wang Yunfei spoke to Shinjing. Not long ago, Shinjing was still filled with jealousy and anger. But now when she heard Wang Yunfei's words, she felt joy in her heart. She then replied, a few days ago, I met a person who just arrived in the sacred royal city. He knew that Rong Yen and I are students of the Divine Weapon Academy and hence, he intentionally got close to us. After that, he begged us to recommend him to the Divine Weapon Academy. We recommended him to be Moon's apprentice, but who would have thought that this person didn't know what's good for him? Now, I wonder if he and Moon have developed feelings for each other because of their weaponsmithing, causing him to be so arrogant. Wang Yunfei understood in his heart, he didn't expect it to be because of a mere apprentice. He couldn't help but to smile. Junior sister Moon, I can introduce many outstanding apprentices to you. Senior brother, things aren't like what Shinjing said. Shinjing and Rong Yen didn't respect others. Moon spoke. How about this? I'll apologize to you on behalf of junior sister Shinjing. After all, we are fellow apprentice sisters. Don't let such a small matter affect the harmony between us. Wang Yunfei spoke. Moon felt somewhat unhappy in her heart when she heard Wang Yunfei saying that it was a small matter. However, she still respected this genius senior brother of hers. Hence, she added, this matter has nothing to do with senior brother, there's no need for senior brother to apologize. Wang Yunfei had a satisfied smile on his face when he heard this. That settles it then. I will recommend some outstanding apprentice weapons to junior sister. Junior sister Moon, please don't ruin the harmony between us for the sake of a mere apprentice weapon. After all, an apprentice weapon is just an apprentice weapon, it is destined that he will never be one of us. Moon started again. She stared at Wang Yunfei, feeling somewhat disappointed. Her gaze shifted downwards as her beautiful eyes froze. She saw Qin Wenin carrying little rascal in his arms as he turned to leave. Not this. Wang Yunfei, I didn't expect you to be such a person as well. Moon's countenance turned completely cold. After which, she walked downwards as she called out, Qin Wenin turned his head and smiled at Moon. Moon, your examination has already ended. It's time for me to leave. Don't be unhappy because of me. Hypocrite. Shinjing couldn't help but coldly snort when she saw Wang Yunfei's countenance turning incredibly ugly. Seems like the two of them are indeed in cahoots. Rong Yen didn't conceal his voice at all, causing everyone in the public square to hear it clearly. What status did Wang Yunfei have in the academy? Yet today, he was actually being criticized by others. His gaze turned to Qin Wenin and Moon as he icily spoke. A mere apprentice, what kind of place do you take my Divine Weapon Academy for? Do you think you can come and go as you please? Although his temper wasn't bad, And earlier he wanted to resolve the conflict between Moon and Shinjing in front of everyone, wanting to gain a favorable impression from both of them. However, because of a mere apprentice, Moon actually fell out with him. He, Wang Yunfei, was actually inferior to a mere apprentice? Qin Wenin inclined his head, calmly glancing at Wang Yunfei. He initially wanted to quietly spectate this examination, but who would have thought that such a huge commotion would occur? He lifted his foot and stepped out, causing rumbling sounds to echo out. On the public square, divine inscriptions flashed as they extended outwards unceasingly. Qin Wenin continued stepping out, and an instant later, the incomparably exquisite divine inscriptions on the ground radiated a terrifying light as the roars of terrifying ferocious beasts could be heard. Terror appeared on the faces of the crowd. How could this be possible? One divine inscription per step? Not only that, they were all powerful fourth-ranked divine inscriptions. You aren't qualified to speak to me like this. Qin Wendian stared straight at Wang Yunfei. Chapter 6:18. Qin Wendian originally didn't have any plans to stay here for long. It was only because of Moon that he decided to stay here for 2 more days. He initially wanted to leave quietly after the weaponsmithing examination was over. Being able to see Moon rise to fame in the academy, this trip could already be considered perfect. However, reality was beyond his expectations. He didn't intend to bicker with Rong Yan and Shinjing, nor did he wish to disrupt Moon's life in the Divine Weapon Academy. Yet, there were some things that forced their way to her. Since this was the case, he had no choice but to smooth things over. Hence, he displayed his extraordinary attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. After which, the current situation was created. The gazes of those who were focused on Wang Yunfei and the treasured pagoda all landed on him. Or more accurately, they were staring at the divine inscriptions beneath his feet. Every step he took was a 4th-ranked divine inscription. Such a terrifying level of attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions was sufficient to cause those so-called geniuses of the Divine Weapon Academy to feel despair. Would they be able to reach such a level? Even Wang Yunfei wouldn't be able to reach such a terrifying level, right? Not only that, the few steps Qin Wenyan took were all aimed at Wang Yunfei, the most dazzling genius of the Divine Weapon Academy. Wang Yunfei, you are not qualified to speak to me in this manner. A cold voice, in addition to that transcendent attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, was undoubtedly the most effective reply to Wang Yunfei's words. Wang Yunfei vented his anger on Qin Wenyan because of Moon's attitude. Hence, Qin Wenyan used the most direct method to retaliate. Could Wang Yunfei do it? He couldn't. Hence, the spectators saw that Wang Yunfei's usually calm countenance had turned ashen. At this moment, the domineering manner Qin Wenyan displayed caused even Moon to be stunned. During the few days she interacted with Qin Wenyan was magnanimous, cheerful, and always had a smile on his face, giving off a misconception that he didn't care about anything. This was the first time she saw such a domineering and tyrannical side of Qin Wenyan, completely different from when he faced Shinjing and Rong Yan. At this instant, Qin Wenyan didn't conceal his sharpness at all. It was as though as long as he willed it, he could become the focal point. Even Wang Yunfei paled in comparison to him. This caused Moon's heart to tremble. Who was this fellow exactly? Among the crowd, the ones with the most intense fluctuations in their hearts were none other than Rong Yan and Shinjing. Right now, the sharpness radiating from Qin Wenyan caused their hearts to tremble. They had actually arranged for Qin Wenyan to be their apprentice. If that was the extent of it, it was still fine. But they even forcefully pushed Qin Wenyan to Moon, making him her apprentice. Shinjing and Rong Yan weren't fools. When they saw Qin Wenyan's strength as well as Moon's protection of him, how could they still not understand how Moon managed to complete her transformation? All of these were given to Moon by them. Qin Wenyan was helping her. What was even more ridiculous was that they even tried to make things difficult for Qin Wenyan. But now that things had come to this, there was no turning back. Qin Wenyan then shifted his gaze onto Rong Yan and Shinjing. His ice-cold gaze was like a sharp sword, causing the hearts of the two of them to tremble. Not everyone is as hypocritical as the two of you. Moon has a kind heart. Although I was gifted to Moon by the two of you using my identity as an apprentice, Moon didn't show any disrespect towards me. On the contrary, she allowed me to observe her forging, hence I treated her as a friend. As for the two of you, I've never shown any malice towards you, but the expressions on your faces are filled with arrogance and disdain. Even your words contain hints of humiliation. Qin Wenin coldly continued, looking at that arrogant countenance of yours, those who don't know would think that you too are very strong. You are merely ordinary students. I really don't know where the arrogance written on your faces comes from. Do you know why I don't want to bicker with you too? Because you are not worthy. His words were like heavy hammers smashing into the hearts of Rong Yen and Shinjing, causing their countenances to turn pale. That's right, from the start to the end, Qin Wenyin didn't want to bicker with them. It wasn't because he didn't have a temper, but rather, he felt that they were not worthy. How arrogant were these words? However, Qin Wenyin did indeed have the confidence to back it up. I know who you are. At this moment, Wang Yunfei stared at Qin Wenyin as he coldly spoke. Qin Wenyin inclined his head, only to see Wang Yunfei coldly laughing. 7th level of Heavenly Dipper, as well as your aura. I won't be wrong. In the Flying Immortal Tower, you took out hundreds of top-tier 4th-rank divine weapons in exchange for the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder, and even killed Shui Yunfan of the Cold Slaughter sect. Who would have thought that you were actually hiding in my Divine Weapon Academy? Wang Yunfei's words once again caused a huge wave of commotion. Even the elders in the spectator stands were moved. Taking out hundreds of top-tier 4th-ranked divine weapons? How strong was the weaponsmithing prowess of this man? Just by looking at his terrifying attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, one could already imagine how easy it would be for him to forge a top-tier 4th-ranked divine weapon. Not only that, why did Qin Wenyin use so many divine weapons to exchange for the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder at the Flying Immortal Tower? So what if I know? Qin Wenyin coldly spoke to Wang Yunfei. You came to my Divine Weapon Academy because you have no way to forge weapons by yourself. Hence, you needed to borrow the strength of the Divine Weapon Academy. Moon is precisely the person who helped you forge weapons. You used the resources of my Divine Weapon Academy to forge divine weapons to exchange for the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder, and now, you even dared to act so arrogantly here. Do you think that you have extraordinary talent in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions? As expected of a heaven chosen of the Divine Weapon Academy, Wang Yunfei very quickly deduced many things. Qin Wenyin came to the Divine Weapon Academy because he wanted to borrow the strength of the Flying Immortal Tower. Also, this man didn't have any strong backing to rely on, which was why he wore a conical bamboo hat to conceal his identity. Since this was the case, how could they allow him to leave so easily today? Wang Yunfei, aren't your words too shameless? The resources he used were all my own. When did I use the Academy's resources? In the past, Moon had always idolized Wang Yunfei. But right now, she was completely disappointed. Even if he was still the most outstanding genius in the Heavenly Dipper realm of the Divine Weapon Academy. Qin Wenyin called out. Moon glanced at Qin Wenyin only to see Qin Wenyin smiling. There's no need to fight, because it's completely meaningless. Moon's countenance stiffened, an intense sense of disappointment could be seen in her eyes. Although she had performed outstandingly, her status in the academy couldn't be compared to Wang Yunfei, whose achievements in the path of cultivation as well as his talent in weaponsmithing. If not, she would be able to help Qin Wenyin. Wang Yunfei, no matter what excuse you find, you are still coveting the treasures in my possession. However, are you even worthy? Qin Wenyin sarcastically spoke again. Seniors of the Divine Weapon Academy, what do you all have to say about this matter? Such an arrogant voice caused the hearts of many students to tremble. This man was too arrogant. He basically didn't care about Wang Yunfei at all. Your weaponsmithing prowess is extraordinary. Are you willing to join our Divine Weapon Academy? An elder asked. I don't like to be restricted. I can only let down seniors' kindness. Qin Wenyin rejected without any hesitation, causing Moon to feel even more nervous. Since you are not a student of our academy, we, the elders, naturally won't interfere in the grudge between you and Wang Yunfei. You can settle it yourself. That elder spoke. I'm sure everyone has seen Moon's weaponsmithing prowess. If she is in the Divine Weapon Academy, there shouldn't be anyone making things difficult for her, right? Qin Wendian asked again. Don't worry, we aren't blind. Moon's weaponsmithing prowess is naturally in our eyes. As long as she is willing, the elders of the academy will accept her as a disciple. Our Divine Weapon Academy isn't so lacking in magnanimity that we would vent our anger on a genius of our academy just because of the grudge between you and Wang Yunfei. That elder replied. Junior naturally believes in the Divine Weapon Academy. Qin Wendian nodded. He turned to Moon. Moon, your talent in weaponsmithing isn't bad. This place is very suitable for you. Work hard and you will definitely have accomplishments in the future. This matter shall end here. It has nothing to do with you. No. Moon wanted to speak. She knew how strong Wang Yunfei was. He was someone who would be participating in the sacred battle platform tomorrow. Facing such a powerful existence, even if Qin Wentian's attainments in divine inscriptions were extraordinary, it was impossible for him to surpass Wang Yunfei in terms of combat. This matter ends here. Qin Wentian directly interrupted Moon's words. As for Wang Yunfei, I don't care about him. At this moment, when Moon saw the self-confidence Qin Wentian exuded, she actually started to believe Qin Wentian. Just when she was hesitating, Qin Wentian turned to Wang Yunfei and asked, I heard that you will be heading to the sacred battle platform tomorrow to join in the fun? Wang Yunfei started. After that, he coldly laughed. There's a battle arranged tomorrow. I, Wang Yunfei, do indeed want to go there to take a look. As for the battle arranged tomorrow, I also want to take a look. The sacred battle platform is truly suitable for me to spread my name across the world. If you can defeat me, I will gift you as many divine weapons as you want. Qin Wentian emotionlessly spoke. Since he was going to battle tomorrow, he might as well settle it tomorrow. Wang Yunfei contemplated for a moment before stepping out and pointing to Qin Wentian. You said it yourself. What if you don't appear tomorrow? I will go with you tomorrow. If he doesn't appear, you can do whatever you want to me. Moon stared at Wang Yunfei as she spoke. Qin Wendian started, but upon seeing the resolution in Moon's eyes, he didn't say anything more. How could he not appear tomorrow? After all, there was already a battle arranged for him. Fine, everyone in the academy has heard your words. Wang Yunfei stared at Moon before pointing to Qin Wentian. If you don't dare to appear tomorrow, I will make Moon become my maid. You better think about the consequences. Qin Wentian's countenance turned cold. If you are defeated, what will you do? Do whatever you want to me. Wang Yunfei was incomparably confident. He had a cultivation base at the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper. How could he be defeated? See you tomorrow. Qin Wentian turned and carried Little Rascal in his arms as he left together with Qin. Very swiftly, they left the Divine Weapon Academy. However, the atmosphere in the Divine Weapon Academy was in an uproar. Even the examination today seemed to have lost its luster. Tomorrow, the sacred battle platform would be filled with geniuses from all over the world. The battle between the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian, and one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, Disher, was so dazzling that it was unknown how many experts would be attracted. In addition to the fact that Wang Yunfei would also be on the sacred battle platform, how could the crowd not go crazy? Moon frowned as though she was worried. As for Rong Yan and Xin Jing, their countenances were ice cold. Tomorrow Wang Yunfei would surely ruthlessly trample on that fellow who caused them to lose all face. Chapter 619. After Qin Wentian left, the year-end examination of the Divine Weapon Academy continued. However, the atmosphere was no longer the same as before. The thoughts of many had already drifted to tomorrow. At the same time, the people of the sacred royal city started to head towards the direction of the sacred battle platform. Although there were over 1 million people gathered outside the immortal martial realm, in the perspective of the royal sacred region, This number was merely a drop of water in the ocean. The vast majority of the people in the sacred royal city had never seen Qin Wenyan before. They had only heard of what happened in the immortal martial realm. Being the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, slaying a prince of Grand Shang Empire, causing an elder of the royal sacred sect to fall because of him. He was the lover of the holy maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, the son-in-law of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, the adopted son of the Emperor of Yi, a disciple of the Battle Sword sect, breaking the sword comprehension record of the Battle Sword sect, and having the highest potential among the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns of the Battle Sword sect. All these titles caused Qin Wenyan to have too many halos surrounding him. Not only that, he wasn't fighting against an ordinary opponent. His opponent was one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses of the Royal Sacred Region, Di Shi, the absolute genius of the Supreme Di clan. In a radius of a few hundred miles around the sacred battle platform, the entire area was filled with people. Countless experts rushed there, the inns and restaurants were all filled. Tonight, no one slept. Countless people were discussing the current situation of the younger generation in the Royal Sacred Region. There were rumors that Gu Lufeng might have left the Royal Sacred Region, while Hua Taishu had joined the Royal Sacred Sect. Other than the two of them, 4 out of the other 6 era-suppressing geniuses had already appeared in this region. There were people who saw them. Many experts from the Celestial Maiden sect also appeared. Lin Xian, who had the title of the number 1 beauty, attracted the gazes of countless people. The upper echelons of the Supreme Di clan had also arrived. There were even more experts from the Grand Shang Empire, and there were even a few sword sovereigns from the Battle Sword sect, etc. In any case, the entire region around the sacred battle platform was in an uproar. Tonight, in a radius of a few hundred miles around the sacred battle platform, many conflicts occurred. Many of them were arguing over who would be the victor between Qin Wenyan and Di Shi. Tonight, no one slept. Hence, the scene of the sacred battle platform being packed so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through when the sun rose the next day. Without the strength of a celestial phenomenon ascendant or the backing of a major power, they didn't even dare to squeeze their way to the front. They didn't even dare to soar through the air and fly above the heads of the crowd. For someone without any background or strength, wasn't this simply courting death? The rising sun shone down on the sacred battle platform, causing the entire platform to be dyed in a layer of golden light. The sacred battle platform had viewing platforms in all 8 directions, sufficient to accommodate tens of thousands of spectators. Below these viewing platforms, there were many passageways. Right now, there were no spectators on the viewing platforms, but the passageways were already filled with people. The sun is hanging high in the sky. It's time to make an appearance, right? Someone mused in his heart. At this moment, a whistling sound rang out in the air, causing the hearts of many to tremble. Those who dared to fly in the air at this moment were undoubtedly from major powers of the Royal Sacred Region or those supreme geniuses. Only then would their subordinates be willing to tolerate such a thing. Di Shi. Someone instantly exclaimed when he saw the person in the lead. He had a sharp gaze, a murderous expression, and a wild aura that emanated from his entire body. He was like a peerless, ferocious bird. His gaze seemed ordinary, but so long as one came into contact with his eyes, one would be able to sense the terrifying explosive power contained within that indifference. Is he Di Shi? He's actually the first to arrive. Seems like he has been preparing for this battle for a very long time. The crowd instantly erupted into an uproar. Di Shi was the first to step onto the sacred battle platform. Behind him, there were many experts from the Supreme Di clan, all of them exuding a terrifying aura. These people arrived at one of the 8 viewing platforms and flicked their sleeves as they sat down. Di Shi sat down as well. His eyes were closed as he silently waited, not releasing any aura at all. Not too long after, another group of silhouettes soared through the air, landing on the viewing platform, causing a huge commotion. These people were all from the Grand Shang Empire. The person in the lead had a crown on his head, exuding a lofty aura. His eyes gleamed with the aura of a true dragon, as though he was the ruler of this entire world. That's the Crown Prince of Grand Shang, Shang Yin. 20 years ago, he was ranked number 4 in the immortal martial realm. His talent is unparalleled, and he's currently cultivating in the royal sacred sect. Now that Shang Tong has fallen, it's rumored that the Emperor of Grand Shang is going to confer the title of Crown Prince to him, allowing him to inherit the throne of Grand Shang. Seems like the rumors are true. Many sighed in admiration. Shang Yin came here with a lofty status, wearing a crown on his head. Maybe he has already been conferred the title of Crown Prince of Grand Shang. The people from the Violet Thunder sect have arrived. From afar, more experts arrived. These were none other than the Violet Thunder sect of the 9 great sections. After the Violet Thunder sect, the other experts from the 9 great sects also arrived. And after that, the Qi clan and Tianfan sect of the western regions arrived, as well as 2 supreme geniuses. The appearance of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, Qi Lian and Fan Miaoyu, instantly attracted the attention of the crowd. However, very swiftly, their gazes were drawn over by others. The people from the Celestial Maiden sect had also arrived. The number 1 beauty of the royal sacred region, Lin Xian, had appeared in the Celestial Maiden sect. Her breathtaking countenance instantly caused many to be dazed. Before Lin Xian, Fan Miaoyu and Princess Jiao Yang of the Grand Zhou Empire had also arrived. Both of them were already very beautiful, yet they couldn't be compared to Lin Xian. The experts from Radiant Gold Ancient Country have arrived. The experts from the War Country have arrived. Li Tian, one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, has arrived. The crowd exclaimed unceasingly. Today, it was destined that countless supreme experts would arrive. And at this moment, a group of people walked over from afar. The person in the lead was clad in a simple long robe that wasn't luxurious at all. Yet when he stood there, he exuded the aura of a king. Such an aura was somewhat similar to Shang Yin of Grand Shang. The human emperor of Yi Qingyun. Someone recognized this person, as many exclaimed in shock. Even the human emperor of Yi had personally arrived. Yi Qingyun is the foster father of Qin Wenyin. Back then, he was absent during the immortal martial realm battle. This time around, he came to support Qin Wenyin, hoping that Qin Wenyin would be able to suppress the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. Father! A voice drifted over from afar. A look of joy appeared on Yi Qingyun's face as he turned his gaze in that direction. He saw Yi Lingshuang appearing together with the experts from the Battle Sword sect. The Battle Sword sect has arrived. Why hasn't Qin Wenyin appeared? The gazes of the crowd searched for Qin Wenyin, yet they discovered that Qin Wenyin wasn't there. At this instant, Di Shi's eyes opened, gleaming with sharpness as he stared in the direction of the Battle Sword sect. He coldly spoke. Could it be that Qin Wenyin is afraid of battle today and doesn't dare to show up? Junior brother Qin has long departed. He should be in the sacred royal city now. A voice drifted over. The person who spoke was none other than Lin Shui. This caused many to glance at him, as well as Ji Feishue, who was beside Lin Shui. Another era-suppressing genius had arrived. Di Shi coldly snorted as he closed his eyes once more. On the viewing platform, the number of people gathered grew more and more. It was unknown how many famous characters there were. In a certain location, a group of experts were gathered. These were none other than the people from the Divine Weapon Academy, and Wang Yunfei was among them. Other than Wang Yunfei, Rong Yan, Shenjing and Moon were all here. Senior brother, this is the stage that belongs to you. Shenjing smiled. She was as beautiful and elegant as ever, but right now, she wasn't as conspicuous as before. Because there were simply too many females who were more outstanding than her. Wang Yunfei nodded, filled with anticipation. The sacred battle platform. Would it be the battle where he, Wang Yunfei, would truly become famous throughout the royal sacred region? In fact, he had long wanted to come here to test his strength. Now that the battle between Qin Wenyin and Di Shi was in the limelight, he came here to make use of this opportunity. I'm only afraid that someone has already slipped away, not daring to appear. Rong Yan mocked, staring at Moon. Today, if that person didn't come, Moon would have become Wang Yunfei's maid. At that time, he could already imagine Moon's ending. What a pity, such a beauty would become Wang Yunfei's plaything. He isn't that kind of person. Moon frowned. She believed in Qin Wenyan. You actually have fantasies about him? Shen Jing coldly laughed. Could it be that something really happened between you and him? Don't tell me your feelings were played by him? Moon coldly stared at Shen Jing. Shen Jing mocked. Look, more and more experts are arriving. When he sees such a lineup, I'm afraid he wouldn't dare to come out, right? When Moon heard her sarcasm, she replied, maybe he would do the same thing as yesterday, appearing here in such a dazzling manner. At that time, you can only look up to him in admiration. Shen Jing froze. She stared at Moon in disbelief. After which, she spoke in a low voice, have you gone crazy? After speaking, she turned her gaze away, no longer looking at Moon. At this moment, a commotion rang out from the surroundings. After which, the commotion grew louder and louder as a terrifying sound wave erupted forth. In the air, the silhouette of a young man slowly walked over. The instant he appeared, countless gazes turned to him. Qin Wenyan has arrived. Is he the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wenyan? This young man was clad in white, simple and clean. His features were handsome, and his long hair fluttered in the wind. Casually standing in the air, he exuded a sense of magnificence. Wenyan, you are here. The human emperor smiled. Foster father. Qin Wenyan nodded to the human emperor. Junior brother Qin. Lin Shuai and the others from the battle sword sect greeted Qin Wenyan. Sir Qin, we meet again. Lin Xian'er from the celestial maiden sect stepped forward, smiling at Qin Wenyan. Wenyan. A voice drifted over from afar. After which, the crowd saw a group of female silhouettes floating over. The one in the lead had a countenance so beautiful that it could topple empires. She wasn't the slightest bit inferior compared to Lin Xian. Qingqing. Qin Wenyan smiled. He walked to the side of Mo Qingqing and held her hand. The two of them stood together, resembling a golden boy and jade girl, a match made in heaven. Is he Qin Wenyan? Wang Yunfei stared at the silhouette of the young man, his countenance fluctuating. Shen Jing's beautiful eyes flickered with a bright light. Staring at Qin Wenyan and Mo Qingqing, she couldn't help but feel a sense of inferiority in her heart. She no longer had the slightest bit of arrogance as she mumbled, these two should be the true heaven's chosen. The instant he appeared, he instantly attracted the attention of everyone. Rong Yen stared at Qin Wenyan. He didn't have any thoughts of comparing himself to him. Moon stared at Qin Wenyan as she involuntarily thought of another silhouette in her heart. Seems like the person you are waiting for won't be coming. Moon, just accept your fate. Shen Jing sarcastically spoke. She actually thought that the person she was looking for would appear in a dazzling manner. How ridiculous! And just as Shen Jing was speaking, Qin Wenyan spoke in a low voice to Mo Qingqing. I'm going to go greet a friend of mine. Mo Qingqing nodded her head lightly. After which, she saw Qin Wenyan walking a few steps forward. Shen Jing discovered that his gaze was actually directed in her direction. Momentarily, Shen Jing's heart pounded wildly. Moon's beautiful eyes froze as well. She stared at that pair of eyes. That expression, there was a sense of déjà vu. Moon. Qin Wenyan called out. Instantly, Moon's beautiful eyes froze. It was as though her breathing had stopped. She naturally knew who this familiar name belonged to. But at this moment, the shock in her heart was even greater compared to the time when he stepped onto the path of fourth-ranked divine inscriptions. Tianwen, Wenyan, Qin Wenyan. He appeared in an even more dazzling manner, like a heavenly deity descending to the mortal world. Chapter 620. Time seemed to have stopped. Moon's beautiful eyes froze as she stood there unmoving. Yet in her heart, a raging tempest arose. This young man was actually Qin Wenyan. Moon had thought that someone like Tianwen might be a heaven's chosen or an outstanding genius from an aristocratic clan. But the reason he appeared here today was because he came together with his clan. But what Moon didn't expect was that he actually came here alone. Not only that, he had changed his face to one that was even more handsome and youthful, appearing in the limelight in front of everyone. Because he was Qin Wendian, the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, the young man who was currently the most discussed person in the royal sacred region. Rong Yen and Shen Jing were both stunned for a moment. They didn't recognize Qin Wendian. But after that, they also felt that his voice was somewhat familiar. After that, their hearts were struck by a heavy blow. The shock they felt was indescribable with words. When Rong Yen saw Qin Wendian appearing, he knew that this young man wasn't someone he could compare to. When Shen Jing saw Qin Wendian, she said that he was a true heaven's chosen. However, the heavens chosen in her eyes was someone she had once humiliated and mocked. Now that she thought back to Qin Wendian's words yesterday, she didn't bother with them because they weren't worthy. Moon's unintentional words actually turned into reality. Qin Wendian really appeared in an even more dazzling manner, and she, Shen Jing, could only look up to him in admiration. "Thank you." A light laugh rang out. Moon's beautiful eyes were filled with a radiant smile. However, her eyes were slightly moist, as though there were tears flickering within. She didn't know why these tears were flowing, but at this moment, Moon was extremely grateful to herself. Her emotions were extremely complicated. "Thank you." Moon sincerely spoke. This young man in front of her, he allowed her to undergo a complete transformation, appearing in such a dazzling manner in front of those who mocked her. He exuded a magnificence that surpassed the generations, becoming the center of attention the moment he appeared. He fulfilled all the fantasies Moon had of her other half, perfect and flawless. But Moon understood that it was destined to be nothing more than a fairy tale. Just like what she had thought before, such a character, only an incomparably beautiful woman would be able to match up to him. Mo Qingcheng was undoubtedly such a woman. They stood together, holding hands. Everyone would feel that they were a match made in heaven. She would only wish the young man in front of her the best, walking towards his glorious future. "Moon, even without me, you would still have completed your transformation sooner or later. I merely did some things in advance. Most of it is because of your innate talent." Qin Wendian gently laughed. "Oh yeah, don't forget what you promised me. If there's a day when I want to forge a weapon, you will help me without any compensation. Naturally, I can even help you forge weapons every day." Moon smiled radiantly. But as the sound of her voice faded, she suddenly felt that there was something wrong with her words. After which, a blush appeared on her face as she lowered her head and fiddled with her skirt. "I'll take your words seriously." Qin Wendian laughed. When the two of them were conversing, Rong Yen and Shen Jing didn't even bother to interrupt. Qin Wendian didn't even glance at them. Such disregard surpassed any form of humiliation. And at this moment, Wang Yunfei's countenance turned ashen. This top ranker of the immortal martial realm actually had a higher attainment in the Tao of divine inscriptions than him. And as for the path of cultivation, there was no doubt that if the two of them were at the same level, he would only be insta-killed. This was a character who dared to jump levels to challenge Disher. Shang Tong couldn't even withstand a single strike from him. However, he, Wang Yunfei, wasn't at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. He was at the 9th level. Since his opponent was Qin Wendian, it was even better. An intense battle intent gushed forth from him as he rushed towards Qin Wendian. This battle would be the battle where his name would resound throughout the world. "Since you are Qin Wendian, it's even better." Wang Yunfei floated up into the air, staring at Qin Wendian as he roared, "Fight!" Qin Wendian swept a glance at Wang Yunfei before turning and stepping out. His silhouette directly appeared in the airspace above the sacred battle platform. On the sacred battle platform, a dazzling light flashed as a terrifying formless fluctuation could be felt. At this instant, Disher opened his eyes. His gaze was incomparably demonic, akin to that of a primordial bird of prey. He stared at Qin Wendian, his gaze so sharp that it felt as though it could tear people apart. He icily spoke, "Hurry up and settle your matter. Your life is mine." His arrogant voice contained an arrogance that disregarded everything. For this battle, he came here with the conviction that he would definitely win. His words similarly humiliated Wang Yunfei. It was like in his eyes, Wang Yunfei wasn't even worth a mention, and he wanted Qin Wendian to settle this quickly. Such humiliation caused Wang Yunfei to turn ashen. He glanced at Di Shi before stepping out. I, Wang Yunfei of the Divine Weapon Academy, hereby challenge Qin Wenyin. After speaking, his silhouette walked up the sacred battle platform. Choose the rules of the battle. A voice drifted over. It was none other than the controller of the sacred battle platform. This ancient and famous battle platform wasn't a place where just anyone could step on. Unless one was a heaven's chosen, they wouldn't have the qualifications to fight on the sacred battle platform. You decide first. Qin Wenyin stared at Wang Yunfei as he emotionlessly spoke. Divine weapons below the 5th ranked can be used. If you admit defeat, you are not allowed to continue fighting. If you lose, I want all your interspatial rings. Wang Yunfei coldly spoke. Fine. If you lose, I will break one of your arms. Qin Wentian's eyes were emotionless. Fine. Wang Yunfei gritted his teeth, his countenance turned ashen. Qin Wenyin actually wanted one of his arms? The rules are set. Those who violate them shall be slain on the sacred battle platform. A cold and imposing voice rang out. After which, a bright light flashed as a formless rune flowed about. A stone platform appeared beneath the feet of the two of them, and at the same time, a screen of light enveloped them. The sacred battle platform was officially opened. There were no fixed rules on the sacred battle platform. It was set by the two combatants. Once both parties agreed, the rules would be set. If one party violated the rules, the energy of the sacred battle platform would directly kill him. Rumble! A supreme aura gushed forth from Wang Yunfei. He inclined his head slightly as his astral nova was released. His body was clad in a suit of armor, and a resplendent halo of divine weapons could be seen behind him, capable of destroying everything. Terrifying rumbling sounds rang out, as though his blood was boiling. The sharpness in his body grew even stronger, as though his body was forged from divine weapons. Ha! Wang Yunfei stepped out, soaring up into the air. He stared at Qin Wenyin, who was still standing on the stone platform, as he roared in rage. Instantly, boundless sharpness erupted forth, resplendent with the killing intent towering up into the sky. Qin Wentian's bloodline seethed, resembling the descendant of a supreme demon king. He stood there, his long hair fluttering in the wind as his aura surged madly. A resplendent golden light flashed as the wings of a golden-winged great rock appeared on his back. When the light from the divine weapon slashed over, Qin Wenyin abruptly moved. He was like a bolt of golden lightning, vanishing from his original location in the blink of an eye. The golden rock's silhouette lengthened unceasingly as countless afterimages appeared, making it impossible to see where the true body was. Wang Yunfei's aura grew increasingly sharp, yet to his shock, he discovered that everything he saw was an illusion. There was a faint dream-type energy seeping into his body, causing him to hallucinate. Bzz! A resplendent golden silhouette whistled in rage as it shot towards him. Wang Yunfei coldly snorted as the light from the divine weapon behind him erupted forth. That golden silhouette shattered into pieces, yet there was no blood. Wang Yunfei! A voice drifted into his ears, sounding like it came from all directions. The golden rock in front of him seemed to have split into thousands of clones. It was impossible to tell which was the real one and which was the fake one. Wang Yunfei's eyes gleamed with a terrifying cold light as a sharp aura that could annihilate everything gushed forth. Wang Yunfei waved his palms, and instantly, the sounds of explosions rang out unceasingly. Destructive beams of light filled the air, and with a thunderous rumble, Wang Yunfei instantly found the location of the true body of Qin Wenyin. His palms pressed downwards as a wave of destructive fluctuations manifested. However, astral light flashed as a terrifying palm imprint smashed downwards, shattering everything. After which, an incomparably lofty pair of eyes stared at Wang Yunfei as the silhouette of that golden rock rushed over with lightning speed. Right now, Qin Wenyin already had a rough idea of what level Wang Yunfei's attack was at. He activated the illusionary clone art as many incarnations of Qin Wenyin appeared in the surroundings. These incarnations were all staring at Wang Yunfei as their eyes gleamed with a light so bright that it could penetrate into the soul, causing Wang Yunfei's heart to tremble intensely. Seems like I've overestimated you. You are truly unworthy. Qin Wenyan emotionlessly spoke, after which he simply stood there and blasted out with his palms. Instantly, 1,000,000 palm imprints erupted forth, blasting towards Wang Yunfei. Wang Yunfei's countenance grew incredibly unsightly. Qin Wenyan actually dared to look down on him like this? Wang Yunfei's entire body was covered in blood, and there seemed to be a crimson glow radiating from him. Numerous blood-colored spears manifested and shot up into the sky. Thunderous rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly as the palm imprints and spears exploded. Wang Yunfei stepped out, and the light behind him that could mince everything in its path shot out. Qin Wenyan's countenance was expressionless as he continued pressing downwards. The millions of palm imprints seemed to be able to crush the heavens and earth, destroying everything. The two of them got closer and closer, as though they were about to fight in close-range combat. What a violent battle! The spectators in the surroundings all felt their hearts pounding. Such a battle was too violent, using offense against offense. The tyrannical qi currents engulfed the entire sacred battle platform. Qin Wenyan pressed downwards from the air. Each and every palm imprint contained an incomparably fearsome vibrational force. It was unknown how many rounds of attacks had landed, but Wang Yunfei only felt his internal organs trembling from the impact as he felt an immense pressure bearing down on him. Qin Wenyan roared in rage. Yet another round of attacks that seemed capable of annihilating the heavens and earth blasted out. After which, several silhouettes howled in rage as a surge of destructive might gushed forth, causing Wang Yunfei's countenance to stiffen. Die! Wang Yunfei howled in rage, wanting to struggle in desperation. Divine inscriptions erupted forth from his body, enveloping him within. However, he only saw numerous palm imprints slamming down, colliding madly against the halo of light around him. Wang Yunfei coughed out fresh blood as he finally halted his advance, being forced downwards from the impact. A single arm. A voice filled with killing intent rang out. A blood-colored ancient halberd materialized from the void, directly piercing into Wang Yunfei's right arm. With a flick of the halberd, a piercing sound rang out as Wang Yunfei's arm fell from the air. Sword qi rained down, directly shattering the arm. The two of them separated. Wang Yunfei's countenance was as pale as paper. Fresh blood flowed unceasingly from his arm, dripping onto the sacred battle platform. Only this level of strength? You are truly too weak. Scram from here. Qin Wenyan stood in the air as he calmly spoke. The screen of light flickered open. Wang Yunfei walked towards the direction of the Divine Weapon Academy. Staring at his pale countenance and severed arm, as well as the arrogant figure of Qin Wenyan, Shenjing, Rongyan, Moon and the rest all had different feelings in their hearts. Regardless of cultivation or divine inscriptions, that magnificent silhouette of Qin Wenyan had absolute superiority over the heaven chosen in their eyes, Wang Yunfei. Chapter 621. The countenances of the spectators on the sacred battle platform were calm. This battle didn't exceed their expectations. Although Wang Yunfei had a very high opinion of himself and was somewhat famous in the sacred royal city, wanting to borrow the sacred battle platform to spread his name throughout the world. However, not everyone would be able to shock the world with a single brilliant feat like Qin Wenyan did in the immortal martial realm. The talent of those supreme geniuses in the royal sacred region could still be estimated from their fame. Although Wang Yunfei was strong, his fame couldn't be compared to the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. Qin Wenyan was someone who had the strength to fight against Disher. Hence, defeating Wang Yunfei was also within expectations. If not, they would surely be disappointed in this top ranker of the immortal martial realm. This battle caused Shenjing, Rongyan, Moon and the others from the Divine Weapon Academy to be greatly shocked. But to those major characters who came here to spectate today, this was merely a prelude. The next battle would be the one they were truly looking forward to. Qin Wentian's name resounded throughout the immortal martial realm. Now, relying on his incomparable might, he would challenge the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, jumping levels and fighting against Di Shi. If Di Shi won, Qin Wentian's potential would still be limitless. But everyone would treat him as someone on the same level as the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. If Qin Wentian won, his fame would truly suppress the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, becoming an existence that stood at the pinnacle. In the same era, there would be no one who could be on the same level as him. He would be the symbol of an era, the symbol of the future. The meaning of this battle was extraordinary. In addition, this wasn't merely a battle between Qin Wentian and Di Shi. Back in the immortal martial realm, Di Shi even invited the geniuses of the royal sacred region to gather here to battle against the heavens. Qin Wentian didn't feel the slightest bit complacent about defeating Wang Yunfei. He understood that the next challenge was the one he truly needed to face. That was a battle that belonged to him. On the sacred battle platform, Qin Wentian's long hair fluttered in the wind, resembling numerous sharp blades. His entire body exuded a demonic aura. Many people were wondering if this young man would become a new legend today. The sacred battle platform, the most famous battle platform in the royal sacred region, would Qin Wentian's fame rise to fame? Boom! A light sound rang out, as though the earth was trembling. Di Shi stood up, his gaze piercing through space, landing on that fiendishly handsome silhouette on the sacred battle platform. His entire body radiated an incomparably baleful aura, as though a supreme ferocious bird of prey was about to erupt forth from his body, slaughtering everything in its path. His sharp eyes swept over the crowd as he emotionlessly spoke. After the immortal martial realm ends, I invite all heroes to gather here. Geniuses below the celestial phenomenon realm are welcome to participate in the battle today. Let's see who is unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper, unrivaled in a single level. Di Shi's voice boomed out, filled with a tyrannical aura. It was as though he came here with unparalleled confidence. Qin Wentian would become the stepping stone for him on his martial path. For the battle today, he would definitely be victorious, slaying the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian, cleansing the humiliation of not being able to enter the top 10. 8 era-suppressing geniuses, all 8 of them are equally famous. However, I have yet to truly fight against any of them. Taking this opportunity today, I also want to see whose combat prowess is unrivaled. A tyrannical voice thundered out. After which, a burly figure walked out from the crowd. This person was none other than one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, Li Tian. There were many races in the desolate mountain range. Some referred to them as the barbarian race, but in truth, a single race had no way to encompass the entire desolate mountain range. Li Tian was born in the Heaven Punisher clan, and there were also people who referred to him as the barbarian Li Tian. His mandate of metal was unrivaled, pursuing the pinnacle. The blood of the desolate mountain range flowed in his veins, allowing his body to expand in size, transforming into a battle god of the desolate mountain range. He was born with innate divine strength, and in addition to his fearsome mandate of metal, his attacks were terrifying. Li Tian's cultivation base has also broken through to the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. Everyone could feel the powerful aura radiating from Li Tian as they sighed in their hearts. The 8 of them were destined to stand at the forefront of this era, becoming the representatives of this era. After which, Qi Lian walked out. His entire body exuded a tyrannical killing intent. The crown prince of the eastern mountain country, Dongyue Hanjiang, has also stepped out. The crowd drew in a deep breath as they saw the silhouette of a king. It was none other than Dongyue Hanjiang. This battle wasn't merely a battle between Di Shi and Qin Wentian. Similarly, it was also a battle between the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. Sadly, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu didn't come. Fan Miaoyu also stepped out. Fan Miaoyu's cultivation base had already reached the peak of the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper, and as one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, she could be considered the strongest among these people, and had the highest possibility of being unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. Ji Feishue didn't step onto the battlefield. His cultivation base was only at the peak of the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper, and although his talent was high, if he wanted to jump levels and fight against these geniuses, he would undoubtedly lose. Staring at the silhouette of Qin Wenyan, Ji Feishue couldn't help but to admit that the rumor that Qin Wenyan had already replaced him as the #1 disciple of the Battle Sword sect had already become a reality. Just these people? There should still be people who haven't appeared yet, right? Usually, they are all known as unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. Why aren't they stepping out now? Di Shi's voice rang out. As the sound of his voice faded, in the direction of the Violet Thunder sect, another silhouette stepped out. The long robes of this person were embroidered with images of lightning. He stood there, exuding a sense of unexcelled in the world. This person wasn't one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, and his fame couldn't be compared to them. But for those who were familiar with him, they would know that this person was even more dangerous compared to the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. Lu Lan of the Violet Thunder sect, just like what Di Shi had said, he had already reached the level of being unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. What did it mean to be unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper? Just like the name implied, it meant that one was at the peak of Heavenly Dipper, with unrivaled combat prowess. But how could one be unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper? Everyone knew that in order to step into celestial phenomenon, one had to first comprehend a true intent of their mandates before they could break through to celestial phenomenon. However, there were many existences whose innate talent and combat prowess were exceedingly high, and they had comprehended a true intent of their mandates but had yet to break through to celestial phenomenon. Lu Lan was precisely such a character. This time around, other than killing Qin Wenyan, Di Shi also had another purpose, and that was to dominate the entire Heavenly Dipper realm. Although there were many characters like Lu Lan in the Royal Sacred Region, none of them were able to gain the recognition of the Royal Sacred Region, obtaining the title of unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. Only a single person could be considered unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. The others were all fake. If there were 2 of them, how could they be considered unrivaled? Di Shi, right now, he had such ambition, wanting to become the only existence in the Royal Sacred Region. Such ambition, his appetite was simply too great. Wanting to obtain the recognition of being unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper in the Royal Sacred Region was even more difficult compared to becoming one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. There were simply too many demon-level characters in the Royal Sacred Region, and there were also too many who were stuck at the peak of Heavenly Dipper but had yet to break through to celestial phenomenon. Some of these people roamed the world, some hid in seclusion, seeking a breakthrough, and there were even some who had comprehended a few true intents of their mandates. Under such circumstances, other than those supreme geniuses who founded an era, who else could obtain the title of being unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper? Another silhouette walked out. This person was clad in golden battle armor, and his entire body was bathed in golden light. His eyes stared at Li Tian as his battle intent towered up into the heavens. The Crown Prince of Radiant Gold has arrived. Upon seeing this person, the countenances of many froze. This person was absent from the immortal martial realm, and it was said that he had a stroke of good fortune that allowed him to comprehend a true intent of his mandates. Now, it was unknown how terrifying his true combat prowess was. In the direction of the war country, another silhouette stepped out. This person had a middle-aged appearance, looking to be around 40 years of age. He was a heaven chosen of the war country, and was also a disciple of one of the 9 great sects, the Heaven-Cleaving Manor. His strength was so terrifying that it was rumored that he had also stepped into the unrivaled realm of Heavenly Dipper. Lu Lan and this heaven chosen from the war country, they didn't enter the immortal martial realm a few months ago. Their combat prowess was extremely high, but the immortal martial realm was a test of talent and potential. There were many older characters in the Royal Sacred Region whose combat prowess was exceedingly high, but this didn't mean that they would choose to enter the immortal martial realm. Because if their talent wasn't high enough, the immortal martial realm might just bury them. These characters already had a foot in the celestial phenomenon realm, why would they still want to take the risk and enter? Only the 8 era-suppressing geniuses didn't have any fear. They had absolute confidence in their own talent. Although the immortal martial realm could bury geniuses, it wouldn't be able to bury them. This battle is getting more and more exciting. However, where did Di Shi's confidence come from? The hearts of the spectators trembled. Could it be that Di Shi had also comprehended a true intent of his mandate? If that was the case, Qin Wenyan would definitely be in danger. Although Qin Wentian's talent was extremely high, his cultivation base was only at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. If he wanted to fight against those unrivaled existences in Heavenly Dipper, his strength wouldn't be sufficient. Wenyan, be careful of these people. They are all existences at the peak of Heavenly Dipper who have comprehended a true intent of their mandates. Lin Shuai transmitted his voice to Qin Wenyan. It's enough for you to fight against Di Shi. Even if you refuse to fight against these people, no one would say anything about it. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. He felt an immense pressure gushing towards him. These people who came to the sacred battle platform today were all extremely terrifying. 9 people, very good. Di Shi swept his gaze over. Of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, there were 5 of them. In addition, there was Qin Wenyan, Lu Lan from the Violet Thunder sect, the Crown Prince of Radiant Gold, and the Heaven Chosen of the War Country. 9 people, any one of them would be able to cause the crowd to tremble when they appeared. But today, all 9 of them walked up to the sacred battle platform at the same time. Since all of you have appeared, why don't we have a battle to decide everything? I suggest that all 9 of you enter the sacred battle platform at the same time. How about it? Di Shi's countenance sharpened as he spoke. The sacred battle platform could accommodate multiple people. Madmen, why is Di Shi so crazy today? This Di Shi, why is he so confident? Could it be that his strength has already reached another level? Many people sighed in their hearts when they heard Di Shi's crazy words. Wenyan, if all 9 of you enter the sacred battle platform at the same time, it means that the 9 of you will be directly fighting against each other. None of you can think about remaining unscathed. You have to take turns to fight. Be careful. Lin Shuai continued to transmit his voice to Qin Wenyan. Such a battle was simply too dangerous. Qin Wentian's gaze froze once more. 9 people, taking turns to fight against each other. Not only that, among these 9 people, there wasn't a single one he dared to say he could suppress. Any one of them had towering combat prowess. Di Shi's words instantly caused great waves of commotion. As for the remaining 8, did they dare to accept? Did Qin Wenyan dare to accept? Qin Wenyan. At this moment, Di Shi spoke again, staring in the direction of Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan inclined his head and stared at him only to hear Di Shi coldly speaking. All 9 of you enter the sacred battle platform together. Let's make a pact first. If you don't die, I won't exit the sacred battle platform. If I don't die, you won't exit the platform. The hearts of the crowd trembled. This was a life and death battle. If one of them died, the other would be able to exit the sacred battle platform. Do you dare? Di Shi roared as his killing intent gushed forth. He was filled with lofty aspirations, wanting to slay the top ranker of the immortal martial realm today. Chapter 622. At this moment, Di Shi's overwhelming self-confidence made it seem as though Qin Wenyan was already in his bag. He would die without a doubt. Wenyan, be careful. This time around, the person you challenged is only Di Shi. You can just agree to fight against him alone. Duan Han transmitted his voice to Qin Wenyan. This battle was too dangerous. Other than the 5 era-suppressing geniuses, the other 3 were all unrivaled existences in Heavenly Dipper who had comprehended a true intent. Although Qin Wentian's talent was outstanding, he was still lacking compared to these people. The gazes of everyone were focused on Qin Wenyan. They were all very clear on how much pressure this top ranker of the immortal martial realm was facing right now. He only needed to endure for a year or 2 more and step into the 8th or 9th level of Heavenly Dipper. At that time, it would be much easier for him to face such a situation. But after all, his foundation was still lacking. Wendian. Beside the human emperor of Yi, Yiling Shuang also transmitted her voice over, feeling somewhat worried. Mo Qingqing's hands were clenched tightly. Her palms were covered in sweat, and traces of worry could be seen on her beautiful face. However, she didn't say anything. She didn't want to give Qin Wenyan any pressure. Moon's beautiful eyes also turned over. She didn't expect Di Shi to be so arrogant. Even if Qin Wenyan's magnificence was unmatched, if he accepted the challenge, he would still face a life-and-death crisis. What choice would he make? Qin Wenyan's long hair fluttered in the wind, his demonic eyes stared at Di Shi. The sharpness in his eyes was even sharper than swords and sabers. He challenged Di Shi. If he was weaker than Di Shi, he would die. But if he was stronger than Di Shi, and Di Shi dared to face these people, how could he retreat? This battle was a battle of courage, a battle of conviction. The first time we met, you were incomparably arrogant. I killed your younger brother in front of you. The second time we met in the immortal martial realm, you were still as brazen as before, forced out of the top 10 by me. This is the third time, you are still as arrogant and foolish as ever. In that case, the date of your death shall be today. Qin Wenyan stared at Di Shi as he icily stated, I accept the challenge. As soon as Qin Wenyan's voice faded, the crowd burst into an uproar. Qin Wenyan accepted the challenge. Not only that, from Qin Wenyan's tone, this Di Shi was truly pitiful. No wonder he hated Qin Wenyan so much. The reason why he was ranked number 10 in the immortal martial realm was all thanks to Qin Wenyan. From the looks of it, Di Shi's arrogance didn't seem to have any basis to back it up. After all, the previous 2 bloody lessons had been taught to him. The first 2 battles weren't real battles. Today, I will make you regret everything you've done. Di Shi icily spoke. After which, he turned his gaze onto the other 7 participants. Everyone, if there's anyone who doesn't dare to fight, you can withdraw now. If there's no one who wishes to do so, we shall set the rules of the battle. The 7 of them were all gathered around the sacred battle platform. Since they already stood out, how could they retreat? Since there's no one who wishes to withdraw, other than the battle between me and Qin Wenyan, which is a life-and-death battle, the others can voluntarily concede and withdraw from the battlefield. How about it? Di Shi spoke again. I have no objections to the others, but between me and Qin Wenyan, there's another agreement. A life-and-death battle. Lu Lan faintly spoke, his words causing Qin Wenyan and the others to be startled. This Lu Lan actually wanted to kill Qin Wenyan as well? Back then in Yi, they heard that Qin Wenyan and Yi Qingyun had a grudge with the Violet Thunder sect. It seemed like they were planning to borrow Lu Lan's hand to kill Qin Wenyan. Despicable. Lu Lan, no matter what, you are someone from the same generation as me. To think that you actually want a life-and-death battle with my junior apprentice brother. Lin Shui mocked. If he doesn't dare to, he can reject. Lu Lan faintly spoke. I accept the challenge. Qin Wenyan spoke in a low voice, his words causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. In this battle on the sacred battle platform, the pressure Qin Wenyan was facing was simply too terrifying. Since none of you have any objections, let's enter the sacred battle platform. Di Shi emotionlessly spoke. In the depths of his eyes, an indiscernible cold light flickered. 9 people, Qin Wenyan. 5 error-suppressing geniuses, Di Shi, Li Tian, Qi Lian, Fan Miaoyu, Dongyue Hanjiang. 3 unrivaled characters in Heavenly Dipper, Lu Lan from the Violet Thunder sect, a prince from Radiant Gold, a disciple from the Heaven-Cleaving Manor, a genius from the War Country, Wu Teng. Such a terrifying lineup. When they all stepped onto the sacred battle platform, the hearts of the spectators trembled violently. Although the sacred battle platform was the most glorious battle platform in the Royal Sacred Region, it was extremely rare to see such a lineup. At the level of Heavenly Dipper, it would be extremely difficult to surpass them. On the sacred battle platform, 9 stone platforms materialized out of thin air, supporting the bodies of the 9 participants. A screen of light flashed as the sacred battle platform was activated. Within it, there was a dimension that was even vaster than what the spectators could see. Even peak-level celestial phenomenon ascendants could be supported here. Who will be the first to fight? A voice rang out. The 9 stone platforms all shone with a dazzling light, enveloping the 9 participants within a screen of light. I will fight against Qin Wenyan. Di Shi's eyes gleamed with an unparalleled loftiness as a terrifying aura erupted forth. The might of a peak 8th level Heavenly Dipper sovereign exuded an incomparably baleful aura. Behind him, the shadow of a fearsome primordial bird manifested, resembling a gigantic azure rock. His entire body glowed with an incomparably demonic green light, and the baleful aura radiating from his eyes seemed capable of slaying people. The 9 stone platforms revolved, while the other 7 retreated in 7 different directions. Only Di Shi's and Qin Wenyan's stone platforms remained facing each other. The top ranker of the immortal martial realm is finally going to face off against the 8 era-suppressing geniuses? The spectators stared at the two on the sacred battle platform. Di Shi stepped out, resembling a supreme primordial bird of prey. Qin Wenyan was similarly incomparably demonic. His bloodline power erupted forth as he executed the fiend transformation art. Behind him, the shadow of the golden rock manifested as the two of them clashed against each other. The baleful and tyrannical auras clashed against each other in the air, causing whistling sounds to echo out, terrifying to the extreme. Bzz. A raging wind raged as Di Shi dashed towards Qin Wenyan. His palms blasted out as a gigantic primordial bird of prey tore through the air towards Qin Wenyan. Just a casual strike from him already had the might of a 9th level Heavenly Dipper sovereign. Qin Wenyan stared at the incoming primordial bird. Lifting his palms, he blasted out with them as Di Shi's silhouette directly appeared in front of Qin Wenyan. The gigantic primordial bird behind him let out a terrifying screech as a terrifying light flashed. Numerous primordial birds howled in rage as they dashed out at the same time, wanting to tear apart the void. Boom! Qin Wenyan stepped out as his star-seizing palms swept over everything. Resplendent runes of light circulated around his body. Di Shi's speed was exceedingly fast, revolving around Qin Wenyan at a high speed. Qin Wenyan's golden body shone with a resplendent light as he roared in rage, transforming into a true golden-winged rock. His speed wasn't any slower than Di Shi's. The Qin primordial bird and Di Shi's palm collided in a frenzy, causing rumbling sounds to echo out unceasingly. The entire space was trembling violently. Such a battle deeply shocked the spectators, especially those at the peak of Heavenly Dipper. They discovered that if they were to face such a ferocious attack, they wouldn't be able to withstand it at all. Ordinary characters at the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper would be easily torn apart by such an attack. The battle between the two towered up into the sky, and after which, the spectators saw numerous doppelgangers appearing on the sacred battle platform. Regardless of Di Shi or Qin Wenyan, both of them seem to have cultivated a similarly powerful secret art, able to transform into many doppelgangers. Those who were more attentive would discover that Qin Wenyan had more doppelgangers compared to Di Shi. Although this was just a small detail, it caused the hearts of many to tremble. This indicated that Qin Wenyan's comprehension abilities were stronger than Di Shi's. Bang! An intense collision rang out as the two of them separated. Everything returned to its original state. Di Shi floated in the air, staring at Qin Wenyan's silhouette as he icily spoke. "I'm merely testing you. Is your strength only at this level? In that case, I will be taking your life next." After speaking, a terrifying blood-colored light circulated around Di Shi's body. Beams of blood-colored light shot up to the skies as his astral souls and astral novas appeared behind him. An incomparably gigantic primordial bird, an azure rock, appeared behind him. Its baleful eyes seemed to have a life of its own, resembling a demonic bird from the supreme ancient immortal realms. Bzz. A supremely powerful destructive energy gushed forth from Di Shi. At this instant, Di Shi became even more dangerous. The mandate of demons at the perfection boundary, the mandate of corrosion at the perfection boundary, and there seems to be a type of strengthening type will as well. Qin Wenyan stared at the dangerous Di Shi right now. Within that azure light, a terrifying corrosive might could be sensed. Was this really Di Shi's strongest state? He should still have a hidden will that he hasn't unleashed yet. The strengthened Di sure truly resembled a demonic bird from the supreme ancient immortal realms. His body transformed into a beam of light as he dashed out, his speed increasing. With a flick of his arms, the azure rock behind him radiated an incomparably terrifying azure light. Bang, bang, bang. Numerous incomparably terrifying ferocious birds transformed into streaks of azure light that frenziedly rushed towards Qin Wenyin. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he retreated, only to discover that his body seemed to have been frozen in place. There was an extremely powerful formless energy locking him down. This was a type of binding ability. Maybe this was the will of mandate that Di Shi had never unleashed before. In the immortal martial realm, his hands and legs were tied, and he had no way to unleash the full power of one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. But now, he could finally unleash his full power without any restraints. Wenyin. The countenances of the spectators who were concerned about Qin Wenyin drastically changed. They stared at the terrifying primordial birds flying towards Qin Wenyin, while Qin Wenyin seemed to have been frozen in place. Every single era-suppressing genius has an extremely powerful ability. Di Shi was naturally no exception. Seems like in terms of combat prowess, Di Shi still has the advantage. Qin Wenyin is a character that rose up through the generations. Would he be able to walk out of the sacred battle platform alive? Many people sighed in their hearts. If Qin Wenyin lived, it meant that Di Shi would die. Resplendent astral light circulated around Qin Wentian's body. His body gradually grew larger, and a glass-like luster radiated from him, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. His long hair turned black, and even his robes were dyed black. The him right now was akin to a supreme demonic lord. Releasing the illusionary clone art, numerous Qin Wentian silhouettes appeared in that space, stacking together as they blasted out at the same time. The heavens and earth trembled, but Qin Wenyin didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced, causing the entire space to tremble. I also want to see how you can take my life. Qin Wentian's silhouette was many times larger compared to Di Shi. He lifted his palm and blasted it out, aiming for the azure rock. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.